This podcast is brought to you by WeHaulBoats.com. Did you buy a boat? Figured maybe you'd find a trailer elsewhere? Right now you might be kicking yourself trying to get your stabbing cabin moved from Florida to Jersey, or vice versa. Who knows? Maybe you got a canoe, a raft. Maybe you have a boat on a trailer, but your truck's out of commission, or it's over at the Gentleman's Club, having a Bloody Mary. Call Mike at We Haul Boats. You know what he does. He hauls boats, all day, every day, sometimes at night. Depends on your schedule, which Mike at WeHaulBoats.com works around. Sleep soundly and comforted, knowing your boat's in the hands of the best hauler in the game. Don't be silly. Go to WeHaulBoats.com. That's WeHaulBoats.com to get your quote today. Do you have a rust bucket giving you fits? A gun rusting away in the garage? Or some specialty items serving rare purposes? Collecting dust? BoShield T9 has you covered with the best protectants in the business. Put a little in my coffee every morning to loosen up the joints. Put a little on those propellers to increase longevity and surface protection. People like Boeing and NASA have been shooting stuff in the sky for years knowing there's no rust or tarnish due to the protection of BoShield T9. Give them a call. They support motorsports and are good, honest, genuine people. Tell them Boomer sent. Or head over to BoShield.com. That's BoShield.com for your industry-leading lubricants today.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for being patient as we rebuilt the studio. We had a sprinkler head let go and destroyed everything on us. So over the break and Christmas and all, I had my girlfriend Sam, who's now the engineer. You'll meet her this episode. With me to put all this stuff back together. And I'd like to thank my guest today, Christian from Wagon, and just appreciate you being here, bud.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, man, I'm excited. I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to be back with you, man, doing stuff.
This is really a sight to see. This is what Offshore needs.
Yeah,
so
thanks, man.
When you asked me, I shouldn't be here. Didn't win enough consistently. But I'm very appreciative. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's really an event.
Thanks. Well, listen, just one note, just pull that mic up a little closer to you. We did this, and I've elaborated on a couple of shows. We did this because for years, you've been a fan of the sport, at least forever, right? Have you ever seen the small guys highlighted?
Never.
It's almost never. And it's not to anyone's discredit, okay? Because the way this all works is any type of big publicity the sport gets is always funded, and it's always funded by the teams. It's never funded from outside. So as hard as you want to include, as much as you want to try to include everybody, it's tough because you have 20 minutes sold to this person, 20 minutes sold to that person. I was driving home from the races in 2019, coming off of all those big, beautiful broadcasts that we did with P1 and in the APBA Championship Series. I really felt like we needed something like this. I felt like we needed a platform to get the guys in this sport that really keep it alive, the lifeblood of the sport out in the forefront.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm okay being the little guy. Yeah, I build a 21-foot. That's the biggest boat that I build. It's a 21. But Class 7 is so amazing. The competition is incredible. The deck-to-deck racing. We need FAA certifications to be racing in this class. It is that quick. It's that exciting. And that's every race. Even on a calm day, it's a lot of fun. And it's a pleasure to be a part of something that I've developed for a while, even when I was racing the Sutphin, and then before that with Tony. And we can get into that later. But first, I wanted to bring something. So I got the days mixed up, and I apologize. I thought that it was going to be Thursday, not realizing that the 9th was a Tuesday. And thank you so much for texting me and saying, hey, are we on? Because I was about to reply, and I'm thinking, who is this? This is Thursday. And then I look, oh my God, it's Nick. And then, honey, I got to get him. We had things in the works, but please. So tinfoil gift wrap.
Perfect.
So
that's a mechanic's wrapping paper.
Exactly. So the first thing is you got to dress for the office, right? So, you got to dress for the office. But I think anybody that you interview, they got to bring their stuff that you hang on this wall.
I hang them all up.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, man. Randy brought me a cool shot.
All right, wonderful. That's exciting.
No, I appreciate that.
Right. Now, there's something more. So I'm in the metal business. I'm taking this aluminum back. I'm taking the aluminum back with me. No,
that's awesome. Is this number one?
That's number one, yes.
So this would be hull number one, and that's your Savage.
Yes, that's the 21 Savage. That's hull number one. That boat was originally built for me.
Hang on one sec. Sorry, you got me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So that's hull number one that was originally built for me. So what some folks don't realize, and I know we're skipping ahead, is Mark Henderson and I, what was it, 6 years ago? 7 years ago? 6 years ago. We talked to each other and we said, we both have single engine outboard boats. Can we appeal to the OPA? It was me, and I wish he were here, but we said, yeah, why don't we appeal to the OPA and talk to Smitty and see what we could do? And I remember going to the awards banquet. Before the awards, there was the meeting, and I appealed to everybody. The whole organization said, look, we'd like to do this. We don't want any prize money for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Can we join you? And everybody was like, single engine outboard. Our first race was Atlantic City.
Well, and the first real pullback there was the speed bracket on it as well,
Right.
which was at the time was 60, which to a lot of people trying to imagine that class was slow. And I'm glad that it went that way because, yeah, the first race was Atlantic City, and everybody got put in check.
Right. And that boat was built. I already had the molds. That boat was built, but it wasn't put together. So I ran a Velocity with a V8 on it. And so Henderson and I were going back and forth. Should we make it 250 horsepower? We want to make it affordable. It's okay for the little guy because the little guy has to start somewhere. The little guy can't always be in a 46.
Right.
So we decided, okay, let's appeal to the OPA. And you guys hugged us with big arms. And that was so exciting because at Atlantic City, what were there? 7 boats, 8 boats?
I'm not sure now, yeah.
There
There was a significant field.
There was
for
a lot
the
of
first
people.
time. Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. And it showed, okay, we can get some steam here. So I wanted to bring that photo to say thank you. But also, do you remember? Nah, I'm going to save it. I'm going to send it to you. Because there's another photo that I was going to bring that was going to be done Thursday. So just think of when everybody dressed up in drag. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
So there's a picture.
That's a shout out to Mama Was Up right there.
Right. And your aunt, too.
Yep,
Was it your
my
aunt?
Tony.
So there's a picture that you are dressed up in drag. So I hope I'm self-deprecating.
I would appreciate that.
I can make fun of myself. And I think you're the same.
Absolutely,
So,
man.
and as much as people are following Battle Wagon and the impetus and how it's growing, I followed you. And I remember reading your writing. It might have been in 06. I think it might have been a high school essay. And you wrote an essay that was very descriptive about offshore racing and the community and OPA.
It was a speech I did for the Al Copeland Trophy down in New Orleans.
So I read that. And I read that when you wrote it. It's not like I read it just recently. And it was so descriptive. And it was so intriguing. And it pulled me in. I'm like, this kid gets it. And how old are you?
Oh, shit, I'm 26 now.
Okay.
I had to be maybe 10 then.
Okay, so we're a few years apart. And I just thought, this is someone that enjoys family, that enjoys racing, and he understands. And then you put it into prose. So that descriptive language with commas, which, I mean, offshore racers rarely know how to use commas, especially in Facebook and offshore only, all those websites, So I was, okay, this is good here.
It goes back. I want to just, before we completely step over the dressing and drag, that is probably one of my favorite stories that never gets told. We were in Atlantic City. I believe it was the first year my old man was running OPA. Or if not, it was the first year we were involved with it. No, it was definitely the first year we were involved because Kurt Berger was running the driver's meeting. So the pits that year were across the street from a real nice band shell that was like auditorium style seating. And Kurt really worked his ass off to put together what he did. I was young at the time, but from what I could see and remember of then, it reminds me very much of now. So I understand the struggles he went through, and he finally got to a place where the mayor was with him. The whole Chamber of Commerce was there, the newspapers, the cameras, the whole 9 yards. I mean, Kurt really had something for the first time.
You guys come in and just dress it all up.
My mom worked for 6 months buying dresses that would fit all the guys and fake tits and lipstick and the whole 9 yards, and dressed everybody up in an enclosed horse trailer before the driver's meeting, 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, to right down to Bob Oliver was a 7-foot bride. And we come walking through, across the street into the driver's meeting, and I, for the life of me, can't get the image of Kurt's face out of my head. That's the stuff that people now don't understand about us, about where we came from and why we do this. Everybody thinks that this is a business or some kind of lucrative opportunity, or this is fun, man. And that's where it started. That's that letter you wrote that I wrote that you read. That's where that comes from. Is I was born into the fun part of this, and at the moment it's a bit business-like, but we're getting back to that. This season we hopefully get rid of COVID. We got a great schedule put together. There's a race for everybody. We got more races than we do teams in some instances. So I'm really expecting a great year. We'll be back to really having some fun. But no, man, thanks for bringing that up.
I apologize. It sucks when you bring something up but don't actually have the thing to present to you. But I thought this was going to be Thursday, and the thing would have been framed, and you would have been able to see it and laugh like, "Oh my goodness!"
You know what I can do when you go home? Send me a picture of it,
of course,
and I can include it. I can include it in the.
It's only going to be a picture of you. The other people that you named, I don't know, and I don't know if I have photos of them.
Allegedly. That's fucking awesome, man. That is such a good memory that I haven't thought about in so long.
I have a box of the bad boy days of just photos. So I think I brought some. I think this might be. No, darn, I brought the wrong one. This is the Sutphin.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your boats. So if you go to the website, which is battlewagonboats.com, right?
Yes.
Battlewagonboats.com.
Yep.
You can click on all this as we're talking and flip through it and see what Christian does. There's something really cool about that 21 Savage. And you tell me, because from the outside looking in, it looks to me like maybe an Apache Challenger kind of love child.
Do you have more to add to that, or that's the question?
That's my question.
Okay.
Tell me where it came from.
So, yes, the answer is, and I'm going to be transparent here because I get that question a lot. And I got a phone call probably 7 years ago from a guy in Long Island, and this is totally true story. I have to be transparent. I'm a new daddy. I can't lie because I can't remember the lie. So I got a call from a guy in Long Island. I forget his name, Tom somebody, and he said, "Can you help me build boats?" Because I was building my 12 and my 18,
right? And
they sell, and so I wanted something a little bit larger that I can play with. So when he called and said, "Hey, can you help me?" And I think he got my information from Tony because we were building the 38 and the 32.
Tony Pacheco,
Tony,
by the way.
Yeah,
yep.
From Bad Boy and Dolphin. And I went up to take a look at the molds, and the molds were really beat. And they were on the side of somebody's house. They were covered up, and I measured it. At that time, I don't know if I had my 22-foot Apache, because I have a 22-foot Apache to pull measurements off of.
Right.
So when you ask me, was that bottom an activator, a super boat? Was it a Linder? Was it this? The deck is a little bit different, but the bottom is super boat, Linder, I don't know. It's the same bottom. They're all the same. The Apache, the Shadow, the Falcon, the super boat, they all share the same bottom.
Right. Very, very minimal changes.
Right. At least then.
Right.
So I took the molds home. I told the guy, I said, "I'd love to help you. I really don't have the time." I think at that time I might have been working for a senator or applying to graduate school. So my time, I had like 4 different jobs.
Right.
I'm self-funded. So in order to do this fun stuff that we see a picture of, I put the money in.
Right.
So I said, "Look, I would like to help you, but I don't think I have the time that if the molds were great, I'd say, okay, this is the layup schedule you want to use. Put stringers here, put bulkheads here, and go have fun." But the molds needed a lot more work. And I said, "You think you want to sell them?" And then he kind of thought about it for a little bit. We might have gone to lunch. And then he said, "Okay, this is what I want." I gave him his number. We loaded the molds. There was a lumber yard right across the street from his house. We had like 4 forklifts raising everything up. I backed a trailer. I went and rented a U-Haul, backed a U-Haul under it, being towed by a Ford Escape. Right? This was like toward the end of Montauk, Long Island. And so I asked him, "Where did they come from? What's the deal?" I got him on the trailer first.
Right.
Where'd they come from? What's the history of this? Is this an activator? Is this the, you know? He said, well, I'm not really sure, but my cousin worked for so-and-so who worked for so-and-so, and I think it's a splash. It's a splash of something. And you could tell there wasn't that much structure around it.
Right.
So I took everything home. I put the whole mold upside down. I took measurements off everything because I think at that time I had another either super boat or something to look at to judge where the lifting strix were and the chines were. There was no notch in the mold, so I wanted to figure out the bottom is completely all of them share the same bottom, at least in 87. In 87 22 Apache Scout, this 21 for Superboat, they're all the same bottom.
Right.
There's a lot of folks that are going to say, no, there's a little bit of difference. Now my bottom is a little bit different. I thicken some stuff. I thin some stuff. I straighten some stuff. I had the whole mold upside down on 4 55-gallon drums for about a year. And I was just dialing in the bottom.
Right.
Every single aspect, the pad, the lifting strix, everything. And then I made a boat. I really didn't worry about the deck. I was concentrated on the hull.
Right.
The deck, I know I can change that pretty easily, but I really wanted to concentrate on a boat that would plane easily with little power.
Right.
So, to answer your question, I think they all probably have the same Linder who designed an amazing boat.
Yeah.
The boat handles, even before my little tweaks. I mean, that guy, he was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I just wanted to build a boat that was rugged, and I know you didn't ask that, but that's where the changes, that's where the similarities end, is where when you get, it's giving me chills now when I talk about this. When you get into a battle wagon, and when Lauer, so I have to back up because there's so much. So the boat is built completely different than anything else, and I built all my boats as if they're going to race. So that 12-foot boat and that duck hunting boat, which helped me pay my way through college, it's built just like this offshore race boat.
Right.
So jumping ahead, and I'll back up, but Lauer's in the boat for the first time. Rob Lauer, he's the first client, and he said, "This sounds like an Outer Limits, with the way the water is hitting the hull." And you know that sound when you're in the cockpit and you hear that water. It sounds like a really solid drum, and it's like you could just hear it.
Right.
And this boat's solid. Then when you start dropping it off of 5-footers, and it just wants to keep going, there's nothing like it.
Right.
And the boat just feels so tight around you, but then it comes down soft, and we look at each other and we're like, and then, okay, so Lauer, I love that family. They are resourceful. I couldn't have sold a boat to a better family.
No, and a group of representatives.
Wow.
Just the most solid, respectable, honest people on the face of the earth.
I didn't just sell a boat.
You made an investment.
Well, yeah, but I got an addition to my family.
Right.
And it truly is that way.
Right.
And so what I'm about to say is not disrespectful. Joe Lauer he's a smart kid. He's calculated. He's a hardworking, and he's the throttle man.
Right.
Sometimes he's all gas and no brakes.
Right. And
so we're running that boat, and this was the second time. And I should probably stay on the history of BWB, but we can circle back. We'll circle back.
We're not on a timestamp here, man. You can just keep rolling.
All right. So okay, we want to turn it. We don't have a speedometer. I don't know if the RPM gauge is working, but there's an old worn out 225 that came off of a Mako that I think has like 150 hours on it. And my skin is getting pushed back to my ears, and the tears are going from my eyes to my ears. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to have to turn the boat soon because we're coming up on meadows. And it's like 6-inch chop, like a little, it's not real rough. And the boat just keeps going. It's like it's pushing you in the bolster. So I'm like, okay, we got to turn the boat. This is the first time I'm turning the boat. Hey, Joe, you wanna back off a little bit so I can turn the boat? You want to settle it? Just crank it around, see what it'll do. Now these guys are Garvey speed skiff guys. I'm not a Garvey speed skiff guy. I grew up sailing sailboats back in Atlantic City at a sail camp. This is the fastest I've been going since my Sutphin, but not standing up. I'm sitting down in a 21-foot boat. all right, guys, we got to kind of slow down here in order to turn. And the marsh is coming up, and the marsh is coming up. Like, okay, let's spin this boat. Let's see what'll happen. I'm going to now put paper to idea to all those
You gotta
hours.
find the line.
All those hours in the shop, all those sleepless nights, trying to figure out which materials to buy, everything. Where to put stringers, how to dado the transom. Let's spin it. Boom, spins like it's on rails. We look at each other and we are, oh my goodness, we got something here with an old worn out Merc. Whoa. So a little bit of thickening here of the lifting strakes, a little bit of massaging here. That stuff worked.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't taken the boat apart. Aside if mechanically the boat stays together, like if the kill switch stays on, or if the oil stays in the lower unit.
Things that we refer to as gremlins.
Whether they're gremlins that were man-made or not,
Right.
And of course they all man-made, but the boat will do well. It'll finish well.
Well, I can tell you that I raced against it 4 times now, and everything that I've noticed about the boat is it acts like a much bigger boat. When I watched it run in Michigan City, we were running down the backstretch. This was 2019. There wasn't much of a chop or a swell, but there was a lot of like commuter traffic, spectators coming into the backstretch, stuff like that. And I noticed it rebounded really well. I was running a 22 Velocity with Jeremy Bisson in Tomahawk. And we were getting a little loose coming through the low 50s, accelerating to the 60. Once you got there, you glue it down and you're just trying not to break out. But I'm looking over, and as we're kind of taking that hop and skip, accelerating out, the single outboard hop, I looked over and yours is wet and level and running. Like it really picks up a nice attitude in the water. And I got to think that's a little bit of you playing around with the lifting strakes up in the front.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's a little bit, there's a lot of stuff that made that so. And Michigan and the other, Algonac? I don't.
We were in St. Clair.
St. Clair.
Yep.
Okay, so those were 2 good races for us. And if the boat stayed together mechanically, I think we were leading the line. It doesn't matter. The boat was running well. But yeah, the boat is dialed in that way to where it could run in rough and in calm, and you just have to trim it. And
Right.
you just have to figure out, okay, and you could hold the number all the way around those pins. And it's competitive against guys that are competitive.
Yeah.
And this class is competitive.
Yeah.
And so it'll hold a turn, and Matt can hold a turn, and they're not scared. And they're not scared of the boat. And
Yeah, and there's no quitting those kids.
And the boat will take what they can give it.
Yeah.
And that is what's so much fun to see, because this boat started out as my boat, right? So this boat was constructed and put in a corner, and then family happens, houses, kids, a little bit of graduate school, and the boat it shoved baby in a corner.
Right.
And so Rob calls me up and said, I need you to fix my Shadow. I think he had, it was a blue boat that they won in. So we start taking it apart, and the stringers just fall out of it.
Right.
And so I called him up and I said, Rob, how much do you love your kids? Said this right on the phone. He said, what do you mean? I said, how much do you love Matt and Joe? Of course I love them. What are you talking about? And I said, well, you better come and check this out. So he looked at the transom, he looked at the stringers, because he thought it just needed a floor and like a little bit of bracing, which everybody thinks they need.
Right,
but
right.
once you start taking stuff apart, it's like, whoa, this
It's a
boat is like
rabbit
paper
hole.
mache. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I show him, not thinking about my boat in the corner, not thinking about that. I said, look, this is going to need more than you and I both thought. So he's looking, and he pops his head up. He said, well, what's that? I said, what's what? There's Donzi's about whalers getting worked on. Everything's happening. No, the gray thing over there. I said, well, that's my boat. Well, what is it? And so you know the drill. He said, well, is it for sale? I said, no. And I wasn't, when I built that boat, I wasn't thinking I'm going to go into business selling 21s. I wanted to make it for me.
Right.
And I want to run the boat, and I want to run in Class 7. I wasn't thinking, okay, now's the time I want to start paying mortgages with boats. So he said, well, is it for sale? And I said, no. And then He said, well, it's for sale now. And I said, no, it's not. And that, we went back and forth for like 10 minutes. No, it's not for sale. He said, that boat is sold. I want it together for Michigan. This was 19. And man, I just didn't want to sell it because I wanted to be the one to be in it if it failed or if it did well. I wanted to be that person. So I put the boat together in, well, it wasn't me. It was me and my guys. It's me and my 4 guys, and they're good. And we did it in 2 weeks. Put the hull and deck together, glassed the hull and deck, glassed all the bulkheads, everything. Got it running. I think the fuel tank was already in it, and they rigged it in like 24 hours.
Right.
And then we went testing in Barnegat Bay at 6:30, 7 o'clock. These guys
In the dark.
You heard this story?
I live right there, buddy.
So these guys, they're resourceful, but they work.
Yeah.
And so, like, did you rig it? Okay, did you texting? Did you rig it? Is this done? Is that done? So then I would go and I bring my tools and I'd work on stuff. I would work on the dash. Matt would take a part, take a piece. Joe would take a piece, and then we'd get the boat done. I want to see this boat run. And you get to know a family, right? And okay, these guys are battle wagon. These guys are battle wagon guys. They're resourceful. They don't stop. They work hard. They're intelligent. That's my criteria. So,
well, you just ruled out half of offshore.
that's why I don't race. That's why So anyway, that's a whole nother story that we could talk about. So we tow it to the ramp, and it's like 6:30 at night. So maybe closer to 7. We back it in. We start it up. It looks like a sprinkler went off on the midsection between the power head and the mid. All right. Who forgot to tighten the bolts down to the power head? So we get it. We grab it. Okay, put it back down. Let's see what we got. We're thinking, all right, we're going to go rip it and come back. Nope. Still sprinkler system. Oh, shucks. This is not good. We got to be in Michigan, and literally it's Friday, Saturday. It's like 8 hours away, and they got to sleep. So, and this is the first time the boat is in the water.
Right.
Ever. Okay. All right. Let's have a little meeting, and people are just starting to come to the ramp because nobody's seen this stuff around Barnegat, not in a while. So we bring the boat back to their house. We have a hitch crane, whatever. It's not a gantry, but you stick it in the back of a truck, and it's a little jack, right? We loosen all the bolts, pop the power head off, and now we see wherever these parts come from, and what's the word? It's
remanufactured.
No, it's worse than that. It's wherever the parts come from in different, like this came off of this junk pile and that came off of that junk pile, and this power head came from somebody that just didn't need it anymore, and we take the power head off the midsection, and whoever took the power head off before used a screwdriver. And when you do that, there's chunks of midsection missing. Okay, no problem. And I'm thinking, man, this boat's not going to make it to Michigan. Rob said, we got this. Go get me a file. Joe goes and gets a file, and we start. And I will corroborate everything that I'm saying in either Instagram or Facebook. You'll see pictures of this stuff. So we're filing it down as Joey's going to get our most prized possession, JB Weld. Okay, and I'm thinking, man, brand new boat. Wish we could do a new motor, but let's just see where this goes. So we file it. I pray for whoever gets that motor after us. I don't know where that motor is now, but you're not going to be able to get the power head off the midsection.
It's JB welded to
it.
It's
JB welded, and you're like it JB welded, and it's not like do we want this JB weld to last 10 minutes kind, or do you want it to last 5 million years kind, right? Okay, so we smash it with right on, and then we go back to the ramp. And this is all a part of what makes racing. The climb. Isn't there a song? Who sings that stupid song? Oh my God! So I heard. So don't ask me how I know about that, but I have 2 daughters. So the climb, it's kind of fun, right? I was told it was kind of fun. I'm like, no, it's really not. Now it's dark. Okay, so now it's dark. Back it down. Let's see if it's going to sprinkler again. And, everybody stayed. This is in the matter of like maybe 25, 30 minutes. And no water. Okay, great. Water's coming out of where it needs to come out, not in the midsection. Okay, now it's starting to get dark. Back it in, put life jackets and helmets on. Rob and Joe go for a ride. Now everybody's, that dock over in Barnegat Bay is packed with people, and they're really loud. I almost go to the road, which is like a quarter mile, not a quarter mile, but like it's farther away. Because your emotion, like, okay, this boat's going to run. This is my first boat, first real race boat. And my heart is just pounding out of my shirt. So I walk back, and everybody's hollering, but it's dark. So if anything, and we don't have a chase boat, so if anything happens, and everybody's hollering, we can't hear the splash.
Right.
We can't hear the wah, that thing. So I lost my temper, and I said, "Well, everybody, please shut the blank up, because if something happens, we're not going to be able to hear it. Of course, we're not going to see it because it's dark." Boat comes flying. It's freight training right by, and I saw how it was running, and I said, "Oh, we got something here," and I just knew. So as soon as they came in, after the pontoon boat that came by and said, "We're going to call the Marine Police because you have no lights on," and like, okay, come on, back to trailer and let's get this boat out of here. Rob, how'd it go? He said, "We'll see you in Michigan," and this boat's going to Michigan.
Yeah, and it ran really well.
Yeah,
you had a couple of really good showcases, man, down in Moorhead, just a couple months ago. You were down there commentating with Mikey Y, which is awesome. Thanks for doing that. And it's good because you got to shed some light on what that is. I mean, I've raced against it, so I know the drill. I know it's a good boat. If
we kept the lower unit oil in the lower unit, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, oh, we woulda, coulda, shoulda, because that's not me. But I think it would have placed okay. I think.
At the very least, it's a front runner. At the very least, and you still have a lot of changes and improvements to make. So that's why I wanted to have you on, man. I'm excited about where you're at with this project. I'm excited about the possibilities of it, especially because it's in my favorite class in offshore. I'm so happy about the steam that's been building behind Class 7. It is such a cool thing because after doing it a couple times, you really get the feel for it. It is such a cool gig. It's not an arm and a leg to race. I mean, it could be. I mean, it depends on who you ask. It depends on if you ask you or Perry. I think
don't ask me. Ask Rob. I filed as a 501c3 this year.
Right.
I'm joking. It's a charitable organization. Right. I'm joking. But that picture is in. I think it's in Michigan. But that motor has 800 hours on it.
Right.
800 hours. We looked at it, and we're tickling guys who are running newer stuff.
Yeah.
And we're tickling them. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the other competitors. This is racing. We're competitive. And I know it's wintertime, so a lot of people's fingers love the keyboards. But this is fun. And Class 7 is an amazing class.
That's what I like about it. There's a lot of good classes in offshore. Pretty much any class you get in, you're going to have a blast. But there's something particular about Class 7. There's so much drive behind it. There's so much. I think it comes from that 20 to 24 foot range of single outboard Vs. Outside of racing, people stand behind them. Like when you're standing at the sandbar on a Sunday afternoon out in your boat, there's a gang of those single outboard guys all arguing about who's faster. And we're not at a boat race. So now you took that and you added that to racing, where now you have young men who can come in the sport. I always make the mistake of calling them kids. They're young men. Go talk to Nick and Prescia or Joe Riley or any one of these kids. Guys, they're gentlemen. They will tell you all about what they do. They will tell you how to get involved, what you should do, what you should avoid. And I love it, man. I love having the correct image, pushed to the fans, not the jerk offs.
I couldn't agree more with you about Impressia and Riley. They are competitors and they're sportsmen, and the camaraderie is there with Class 7. And I don't know,
but they're the right kind of sportsmen, which is what I really, really enjoy. And you brought on with your boat that you created and your team that has been created from it with the Lowers. They're the same. They're cut from the same cloth. they will scratch and claw for everything, and they're happy to do it, which is what really draws me to all this, is because I grew up around that, and I really appreciate that.
Well, and also if they lose, they will put out their hand and say, "Nice job."
Absolutely.
And they'll be the first ones to do that. And
you know what's more important? They'll do that when they win. And, you know, it's funny because I've seen so many people make that mistake. It's good to be humble when you lose, but it's good to be humble when you win, too. People forget about that. And just this past World Championships down in Moorhead, they ended up leaving with a first-place trophy that they had an inkling that they didn't really deserve, that there might have been an issue with a GPS, or I don't really know the whole situation.
My guys?
Yeah, Rob and Joey.
Yeah. 1/10 of a mile an hour.
Yeah. So
and that's okay.
Listen,
those rules are rules.
It happens, you know, and if I gave you that 10th, you'd want the next one too. So it's, you know what I mean? It just, but what's so cool is that night I'm standing out back on the deck behind Jack's Waterfront Bar in Moorhead City, North Carolina. Love you, Jeff McCann. And I'm sitting there and Matt comes up to me and you could see it, like something's wrong. And I didn't understand because in my head, he won, right? I'm not involved in every decision that gets made. That's Frank, right? So he comes up and he goes, Boomer, I gotta tell you, man, that you're going to catch some heat for this. You know, he goes, I think I broke out. I think there was an issue, you know, and I just want to tell you, thank you for pulling all this off in COVID. I got to tell you, it left me with such a strong impression. Like, I wish they could have been here today, because that is exactly what it's all about.
And that's why I say I couldn't have sold a boat to a better family. And I was thinking about this on my way up here, is I have 2 girls. And I remember speaking to Rob a week ago. They're polite, they're respectful, but they're fierce.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, you want to know that you're the same way. And when your parents do something right, that means a lot. And so it takes me back to when you wrote that prose about the Al Copeland and the race. You got it. And that respectfulness is there. And that's, and when I created Battle Wagon when I was in high school, I wasn't thinking of making money, because, you know, when you build boats, it's not there.
You just want to know if you can do it.
Well, that, and I wanted to take I wanted to take myself someplace, and you want to test yourself. And these guys know how to test themselves, but they do it well and sportsmanlike. And I think Class 7 is a wonderful place to start. I'm glad that I make a boat for Class 7, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And you're right. I keep innovating. I keep changing things. The deck's getting played with, playing around with the layup schedule a little bit. And I would really like good running equipment, which, you know, I don't like to lose. I'm building a race boat. You don't want to build a race boat for second place.
Right.
You want to win. But, you know, that we're fierce competitors. And that's what I like about Class 7, is they're fierce competitors. And the camaraderie is there. I think in Michigan something happened, and Mr. Impressia was right there trying to help us out, because you want people to race with you,
right?
You know.
Well, and that's the funny thing too, is I get a lot of people just, you know, from here or from down at home when I'm boating on the weekends. They just want to know, you know, about stuff, and I'll talk to them about people that I race against, and they'll pick up on the fact that I'm not like hateful. Like I'll talk about Louie and Johnny or Billy Shipley and Chad Woody, or
Louie and Johnny. They were taking pictures of the bottom of my boat.
Right. So it's just funny because you'll be standing there on the beach, and, you know, I'll be telling them, you know, I was at dinner with Louie the night before, and then we were out racing it, and they're like, "You're friends with them?" You know, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's you can't be the other way. If you're, this sport has a way of just rejecting assholes. Like, it's just,
I don't know.
It's, if there are any, they don't stick around for very long. and it's just, it's good because it really produces that environment. Like, we all kind of have each other's back, and it's just so cool. I would expect anybody to do that. If you were down on your luck, or you were missing a part. Dude, I've gone to races without my hull plugs, I don't know, maybe 24 times. And every race, somebody's like, "Dude, for real? You forgot the hull plug?"
Ocean City, Maryland. Billy Martin needed an outdrive, and I don't think he needed it. I think he needed a seal. I said, "There's an outdrive in the back of that." I was 20 something, so I brought everything that I could fit in an expedition. If I could have put a small block, I would have. But you're exactly right. I said, "There's the hatch is open. If you need that drive, go grab it."
Well, and how cool is that to say you loaned a drive to Billy Martin?
He didn't wind up taking. But it was just, if you need it, that's what it's like.
Right.
And quite frankly, I didn't know the breadth of his commitment and his historical significance on the sport. So I really didn't know him. I think it might have been his.
Well, you would have did that for anybody.
And
yeah.
I didn't know. So yeah, sure. If you need that drive, go in and grab it.
Well, and the flip side of it is too, this sport doesn't have a whole lot of trust fund babies in it. So what you find is that most of us are pretty good with this stuff. You know, so like for instance, Fast Boys down in Morehead City smoked the drive. I had one in the back of the truck, gave it to him. We're racing against each other. It's not even like two different classes. And I said to him, I said, I don't know. It came off of something. It might make it a lap. It might make it the whole race. I don't know, but you're more than welcome to it.
But that's another person you get to race against.
They sent it back to me all, better than I gave it to them. So it works both ways.
It's interesting how you say, we don't come from trust fund accounts. And that, when you ask me to do this, I'm thinking, I don't have anything to say. And I don't have a proven championship winning boat. But then I'm thinking, okay, I came from an area in South Philadelphia that there were not that many options to get out and do things. There was really only two options. You were an athlete or you did things that weren't
desirable.
Well, it was, that other choice wasn't there for me.
Right.
And my mom and dad, I really, they are very significant in how even though they probably don't want to take credit for this, their decision making put me here. And they decided, just like their previous generation before them, they made an educated decision. I think we got to get our kids out of here.
Right.
And my mom and dad enrolled my brother and I in sailing camp. So I'm a sailor.
No shit.
Okay. I wanted to show you, and this stuff will be on.
Yeah, just get it to me. I'll get it all in.
So I'm a sailor. I have a sailing background. So we went to the sailing camp, and the boat that my brother and I shared or used was laying up against the dumpster. It was slated to get crushed and go to the city dump. So my dad looked at it, and we're resourceful too. And I think that's how I'm drawn to Lauer is, okay, we can fix this. We can make it go. And we cobbled everything together. So the sails, everything was all used. And I think when you come from a background in South Philadelphia, I don't want to say South Philadelphia, but if you come from a background that is, how do I say this properly? Working, or it's
blue collar.
I don't even want to say, I don't like collars.
Less fortunate.
I don't even want to. So if you come from an area that is hard, let's just say hardworking,
right.
Okay, that you might be able to see things and pick up on things, and you're almost better than somebody that was just given it to, it was given to you on a silver platter. And we worked really hard, and we started winning in these clapped out sailboats. And there would be duct tape on the bottom of these sailboats, and we're lifting them, putting them on the trailers. It was like, we're kicking these kids' butts.
Right.
Like these kids from like yacht clubs. We weren't from that. This was Bad News Bears stuff.
Right.
We had all races, all ethnicities sailing these boats, and we were going to yacht clubs like on the coast, and we were showing up, and we were gapping these kids. They're like, before gapping was we would pull these boats out of the water, and there would be duct tape, and the water would be leaking out of the boats, and everybody else would be looking at it like, we just got beat by those guys. And so that was the impetus to make these.
Right.
And so when I was sailing, I saw an 18-foot Donzi go by. Whoa, it's sexy, it's loud, it's got that throaty noise like you just want to dance to.
Right.
When a Donzi goes by at idle, there's nothing better than that sound. A small block V8 with throttle exhaust. Whoa! And then a yellow 27-foot Magnum smoked by us, which would probably scare the Jesus out of somebody. I have to have that.
Right.
And I was probably 10 or 13. And so I figured, man, I got to do something to get some. I want to be in that just because of the sound and the mechanics. I knew that it had like this cigarette stigma, like half naked women and guys with no hair and big gold chains. I wasn't about that. I wanted to see the mechanics of it. I wanted to smell the fuel. I wanted to smell the raw exhaust. what the propellers look like with the cleavers back then, and that's what hooked me. And that, like Class 7, it hooks you when you get that push when you throttle down or throttle up, whatever, and you get that it pushes you back in the seat in a boat that has 225 horsepower, it's 21 feet, and it pushes you back. There's something about that.
Well, and I underestimated it. I really did. I think it was my second race with Jeremy. We had done Michigan City, which went off as a 3-boat event for Class 7. It was just us, the Battle Wagon, and Impression. And we were down on coil packs, and we were nowhere in that race. So we had gotten it all straightened out. We went to Lake Apacong, and there was a lot of us in Lake Apacong. I think there was probably
11
that year.
I think I announced that, or I was. Yeah.
It was 2019, and there was definitely 10 or 11 of us. And we were heading down into the first turn, and now my first traffic turn, right? So I run on the weekends. I run a 21-foot checkmate, and I'm pretty used to the small boat dancing. And at 60, it's really like for somebody that's new but not new to racing, it kind of felt like child's play, right? When the green flag goes up, your vision immediately changes, right? Because you realize that accelerating 260 is still hairy. And now you got to do it in these small pockets that these guys are affording each other, because at that speed, the only way to get ahead is to play mind games with people, which is my favorite part of the class. You got to push. You got to get a little shovey. You know what I mean? Because at 60, nobody's making a mistake. They're in the water and they're running, so you got to take it if you want it. So I'm getting in there, and that's kind of my game. I enjoy that. Right? That's, if you do it to me, I'll like you more for it. And so, and I can back that up if you call John Cohen and ask him. The years I raced with John are probably my favorite because he kicked the shit out of me every race, and I enjoyed it. So we were heading down into that first turn, and I had, we were running second. The Chug It guys go down the outside with Jay Muller's kids. And as they should, start to kind of square and make that exit a little tighter, right? So as I'm kind of bearing it down to stay with them, I'm watching the inside because I know I got the Rileys in there who are animals, right? So as we kind of get to the apex of that turn, all it took was one where it just released from the water and caught the back corner, and it was over. It was over that quick. I was facing the other direction, and poor Riley had $10,000 worth of damage on his boat, and luckily we were able to just kind of get Jeremy's back together, but it's that quick. If you underestimate it, if you're going into there thinking you're going to be able to contend with these guys right out of the box, good luck, because it's a real class. In Inglewood, I got lapped the second day, and the most impressive boat on the water to me that day was the Punisher Velocity.
The Dawson.
Yeah, with the Dawson Marine. Thank you, because I always forget Derek Dawson's name. Him and Garrett Moore. And I watched them go by easily 10, 15 feet in the air.
I don't forget his name. You know why?
Why?
Because of that race.
Yeah.
We didn't make it, but when I saw that boat run, I didn't forget his name.
I can honestly say, and I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, I do love Class 7, but I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's. I'm telling you, that is probably the most impressed I've ever been with attitude.
That was a rough race.
It was rough. It was very rough.
And you know how it hurt me so bad that we couldn't make that race?
Oh, because your boat would have been perfect there.
Well, I don't like to say woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Right. Well, I'm telling you, it would have been perfect there.
So we run that boat in the ocean. The bay just doesn't move me unless the bay has 8-footers in it.
Right.
The interesting thing about rough conditions is my wife said, "What's all this racing stuff about? What is this?" She doesn't understand this machismo, this bravado of offshore racing. So one afternoon in August, I suited her up, put her in a helmet, life jacket, everything. Put the lifeline, the hook, everything on. I said, "Listen, we're gonna go for a ride, and if you don't like how fast we're going, just tap me, because the wind is going to blow by your ears, and we're not gonna be able to hear each other. Just tap me." And she said, "Okay." What normally would take from our house to Atlantic City in just a regular center console going 30 or 40 would take you about 45 minutes. We went from our house to Atlantic City and back in 18 minutes.
Right.
I still can't wipe the smile off of her face.
Right.
Because the way the boat, the attitude, and the way it flies, she was hollering, and it was, woohoo, go more, go more, go more. This is what my wife was doing. And she's a professional woman. And when she was giggling, I'll put pictures of that. You have to take pictures of this. The happiness, I still can't wipe the smile off of her face.
Right.
Now, she's been asking me every week, is my boat done? I have to have a boat done. We have to do intercoms so we can talk. I want to listen to the Backstreet Boys on why I'm going out to the beach with intercom system. But it's the way these boats, this 21-foot battle wagon, when it comes down, it's like it just gently lays you down. But when it takes off, it's like it shoots you out of that gun.
Right.
It is just so much fun.
Well, and there's something to a well-balanced boat. There's a magic there. I felt it for the first time. The green Carrera that I raced forever, that's a fantastic boat. I actually kick myself in the ass all the time that I sold that boat. I love that boat. But when I got out of that and got in the fountain with my old man, you couldn't have convinced me that there was a boat that flew better than my green boat. I could fly that thing 20, 25 feet in the air through Point Pleasant all day long with the greatest of ease and be so comfortable it wasn't even funny. I have a picture of my navigator, not even hanging on, sitting with his arms crossed. My brother's got one arm up on the throttle. I'm holding my helmet down and driving, and we're 25 feet in the air. It just became so normal, right? I got in the fountain, and that's the first time I ever saw a deck. Like, you get in the green boat, the deck's from me to you away.
Mm-hmm.
So I got deck in front of me, and you could feel how solid this boat is, right? Now, in my head, we're going out on a pair of basically stock 525s. They got a little bigger injectors. They're, I think they're 540s at this time. So not much. Like, people think that puts a pile of power in them. It takes them from like 580 to 6.5, right? So that's still not a big amount of power for a 38-foot boat. So I'm assuming it's going to be a dog. We got out there. The balance of that boat takes it out of the game. There's never a time where you case, you chime walk, you leave with bad attitude. That boat just noses over and just eats everything alive in front of it. And I just never fathomed that a boat could run that good. It never crossed my mind. Every boat I've ever been in, you had to drive. This thing, I'm driving it down the backstretch. Pops is yelling at me, take your hands off the wheel. Take your hands off the wheel. I just left it straight, and it would stop and just kind of run. I'm like, this is unbelievable. It's magical.
I've lost a lot of sleep over that. That's why when you say it's like sometimes it's magic. Well, magic is also an 11-gallon ballast tank in the front of my boat that I'm thinking, okay, where can I put it? So that balance. I come from a background that I want stuff to last, but I want stuff to run right.
Right.
Because you could build something not right and kind of make it right with rigging and a little bit of trim. That's not the way I want to build. So a small boat with horsepower that's doing 66, that can do 80 and 90, but you're bracketed, I want it to be balanced well. So, okay, I measured out the ballast tank while the boat was in the mold. I'm figuring out where to put the ballast tank and then where to run inlets and outlets so that weight is on the proper side. And then you put Joe and Matt in the boat. So then the idea of ballast goes right out the window.
Right.
I love those guys. They know that I love them. But when you put 600 pounds of beef behind the steering wheel and the throttle seat.
Especially when you're racing against these horse jockeys. I know the feeling. So me and my old man ain't small either.
so that then there's a little bit of a, okay, let me try to figure this out. And, that ballast tank, it's useful. So, you need to, but the weights just move back a little bit behind the dash. So, but that the boat runs. So then when I get in it and I go take my wife for a ride to Atlantic City and back in 18 minutes, I have to adjust the ballast, but not much.
Right.
Because, the boat just runs very, very well.
Right.
And it's just a lot of fun.
What will they run? Have you had one all the way out yet?
Yes. I usually tell that to people that buy the boat first. No. So, and I think I did say that to somebody online.
And I'm assuming that your speed numbers and all are off of that 225, or is that a 250?
So this past year, Johnny Donnelly let us use I think it was a 250. I think it's still I don't know what it was.
Okay.
I don't, but I know that it wasn't a 300 and it
Okay.
wasn't a 280. It was a motor that I don't know how many hours are on it, but it went right onto that 3-liter mid.
Right.
And we didn't have an offshore mid. It wasn't anything fancy. Both those guys, when we took off all the race trim and put a little bit of light fuel, it was well into the 80s.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so when they called me and they told me that, and I didn't believe them at first because I'm thinking, nah. But when they said it was into the 80s, I was like, huh, okay. We still have something here.
Right.
You know, the foundation is good. So,
Right. Well, because what's good about that is you have a solid race product there. So you'll always have that market. But the other market for these boats are the weekend warrior guys that I think they got crazier racing going on than we do sometimes.
of course. And like the king of the cut.
Yes.
Have you heard
in Long
about
Island?
These guys are they are good and they are set up kings. So they have my respect.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they're running, they spend time. They have a lot of seat time, and they know how to set up a boat.
Yeah.
So-
Well, look, for instance, if you need any proof of that, the boat Naughty Boys that joined the field this year,
That's who I was thinking of.
that's James. James came from King of the Cut. He was boating up there in a checkmate. He just told me the story when I saw him in Moorhead. He was boating a little checkmate up there that he would try and race everybody in. And I don't know the truth of all of it. I only know the hearsay, but Riley saw him from Shadow Pirate or Team Progression now and was like, man, we got to get you in something a little better, you know? And now look at him. He won his first race and was right up there. I mean, he won the second day of Moorhead. I don't know where he shook out in points. But there you go. There's a kid that came from there.
Right. And he spent what I think either he told me or somebody else told me, he spends all his time in the boat.
Yeah.
So he knows the boat. And I think that's wonderful.
Well,
and that's how you get good.
And that's what other classes are missing. So I'll be honest. I raced from the time I was 15 years old. I didn't have any real skill till I was about 18 because I didn't boat. I didn't, Jersey's laws are screwed up. So you can't get your boating license till you're like 16 or 17 anymore. And so it wasn't until I was really 18, 19, had my own boat and was boating on the weekends that I felt like I was secure. Like I used to run the green boat and my test time was the parade lap because it's a high compression motor. We're not wasting 116, right? And you're trying to learn with a helmet and jacket on and 20 guys around you whose job is to make you uncomfortable.
You bring up a very good point. And the difference is these boats cost a lot less to run.
Well, exactly. So like, whereas I'm trying to test, like now I'm in a little different boat, like with the Phantom, it's a 525. I'm running regular fuel. I mean, what am I wearing out? A drive? That's worth it. But when you're into the bigger horsepower stuff or just even the larger boats, like the class 4s and up, you can't just go test all day. These guys are out running all the time. It's great, Yeah,
I know that as soon as it gets warm, that all I'm going to see on land is the trailer.
Right.
And that's why we're sold out for 2021.
Awesome.
We're completely sold out for the 12s, the 18s, and the 21 Savages. So I have to build my own boat. I can't go, okay, can I borrow my boat that I sold you? But the interesting thing about the laws is the little red boat that we saw first, the 12-foot boat.
Right.
I built that boat specifically to get around the laws of New Jersey for kids. I got my boater's license when I was 10. My mom had to read me the test.
See if you can pull that up, maybe the muddy duck.
Yeah. And so that's when I got my license when I was 10 years old. And I built that boat when I was in college because the maximum horsepower on a comparable 13-foot whaler with a 9.9. If you're in trouble, a 9.9 won't get a whaler out of trouble. Like let's just say a Bayliner or Grady White's coming down the channel and you need to move quick. That boat with a 9.9 and me at 175 pounds, 185 pounds, that could get on plane and get out of trouble quick.
Right.
So those laws, that's why I developed that. Like a kid that's 16, because when I grew up, you can run stuff. You can run a 40 or 25. There wasn't any parameters.
Right. For instance, when you walked in the shop, the black Checkmate sitting there, all covered in dust, that was my brother's boat when he was 5 years old. That's my old man bought that for him brand new when he was 5 years old.
So that's another interesting aspect that we can get into too. But we had family that created this enjoyment of the sea.
Right.
Even though my parents didn't know offshore powerboat racing, they knew that being at the water would give your kid a better life,
Right.
and it would open you up to things that you might not have been able to do in South Philadelphia. Like, when they put me into sailing, they had to weigh me down with sweatshirts. I could not handle the boat at 5 years old. And your brother's running a checkmate. I'm running a sailboat. They had to put wet sweatshirts on me to keep the boat from heeling over.
Right.
So as I grew older, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do for other kids that were young? Because I want to see smiles on people's faces. And so when I built this boat, I thought the maximum horsepower that a 16-year-old could operate is a 9.9, which to me, that's like, it's kind of like questioning parents and their education of their kids. Like, I was not operating a 9. I had use of a lot of power back in then. We might not have had it, but I could have. But that's why I did that boat, is to get around New Jersey law.
Well, that's really awesome. If you don't mind, I'm going to steal a piece of this podcast out to just make that its own little video, so that there's people out there that can go get something real.
I can't stock these,
right?
And so, so that's the duck hunting version. Same hull, same boat. It's just one's brown and one's red.
I'd call that the ghillie suit.
It really is. It is. It's the muddy duck. It is an assassin when it comes to ducks. When other people are hunting, when I'm out there, the ducks are like, "Hey, let's go by Chris." Say, "Hey to Chris," and they have a free flyby. But that red, like, we do different colors for that red. So someone wanted a 21, and he had one of my 18s, and I think he might have had a 12. So he had a lot of battle wagons. And so the wife, I think they were from Tom's River, said, "You're not going to have one unless they match the bottom of my shoes." That's what she said. And so she showed me her shoes. Do you know about this stuff? Okay. So I told my wife.
Some red bottom shoes or something.
Right. So they're so I did the research. This is not during my cross-dressing days. That was way back when. Right. So now I talked to my wife. I said, "What's this deal about red bottom shoes?" She's like, "You don't know?" No. When I was cross-dressing, they weren't wearing red bottom shoes. I don't know. I've never cross-dressed. So she tells me, "Well, look, they're called Christian Louboutins. They're like these really high-end shoes." I'm thinking, okay.
The price went up on the boat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I had to. Yeah. So, yes and no. So, I matched the red bottom shoes, and the woman was like, "I can't believe you did that. Is that paint or gel coat?" "No, that's gel coat," and it matches her shoes. So it was just like stuff like that. It was just so funny.
Right.
Like, oh my god, it can't be.
Well, and that's the cool stuff you come across in this kind of, everybody in this business has funny, cool stories like that, cool people you meet. And something you said earlier that really makes a lot of sense is, your parents felt like being by the water, you give your kids a better life. What the water always represented to me was an opportunity. It was when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily have to have the appreciation because I literally grew up in a boat. I was 6 months old at the 1994 Key West races. So like I, as a kid, didn't have that, this weekend we're going to go down the shore. I didn't have that. I grew up there. But what it taught me was, like, I can remember being 16 years old. I stole my own man's 14-foot well-craft fish, or 18-foot well-craft fish. Me and 5 of my buddies went out to the shack by us up the Mullica River, and we're all hanging out for the day, and we're listening to tunes, and I'm looking at my watch, and it's, 4:30, 5 o'clock, time to go home. The old man's going to leave the shop soon, Click, battery's dead. What do you do? Right? So I got a dock line, wrapped it around the top of the flywheel, and fired her up, right? All my buddies looked at me like I was Isaac Newton. What it does is it teaches you how to just roll with stuff. You don't, there's shit's going to happen. Things pop up, you run out of gas, run a battery dead, listening to music. It teaches you how to use your hands. It teaches you how to use your head. It teaches you how to be aware. You have to be responsible. And it's so funny because most of us in powerboat racing are probably the most irresponsible people on the water at times, but you have to be, because it's like, I started teaching Sam how to run a boat last summer. And like, for instance, basics, like never pull off a plane without looking behind you. Things that as a kid, you could benefit so much from just a couple of days out on a boat. Like I wish there was more people like you doing stuff like that. That is just so cool.
My first big boat was, it's not like my first, it's not like I have 50, because when others hear this, they're like, oh, this is out of my league. And I think I'm here to say that it's not out of your league. And I put myself through college doing stuff like this. So I built radio control boats. That's what got me here. And I work for Michael Aronow. Did you know that? That
No,
built
I
this
didn't.
cigarette? So that was what I helped augment my education with.
No shit.
So, when we talk about funny stories and responsibility, so I was on a boat at 5 days. My mom said, "Okay, we got to get out of the city. Let's go for a boat ride." And it wasn't like this long journey. It was just like, up and down the lagoon at high tide. But I started building radio control boats, and the reason for that is when I was sailing, I saw that Donzi and that Magnum, and I wanted something like that. And I figured, how can I go do this? I can't go to mom and dad. First of all, they don't have it to give me. But second of all, I kind of want to do this on my own. And I wanted that independence because I knew all the steps that I would work toward would give me that independence, like you said, and it would teach me stuff. So just humor me for a moment. So I'm building. My dad goes to a car show and he gets a 48-inch V-bottom RC boat with a nitro motor. It doesn't do anything for 20 years. And I'm doing, I wrote papers on boats and stuff like that. And that was interesting, like be down on the water running a little whaler. And I asked him, can I put this together? Okay, great. Put it together with a gas motor with all the rigging. And I take it to somebody and said, look, I would like to paint this. Well, that somebody was a boat company owner who I sailed against. And it's not like I've known him and that he was a parent's friend. I just had the guts to approach him and say, what would it take to paint this that color? And he said, why paint it? Why don't you make a mold from it and you can sell more of them? And I was like, whoa, that's a great idea. How about I do that?
Right.
And so it's somewhere in here, but I brought the pictures because I wanted you to see the history of this. Like this is transparent. So I started doing that, and I made an RC boat the same as the 32-foot carry, the cigarette. So it got online. It went on the Donzi page, and from there, Michael Aronow called me. And Michael, if those of you aren't familiar, he's the son of Don Aronow, who invented Donzi and Magnum and Formula Cigarette Squadron. He penned the Apache, but then that went off in a different.
Right.
So, he sent me a message, and I'm like, huh? Michael Aronow. I just read his book. It was freshman year in high school, and I just scooted by finals because his book came out right during finals, and I didn't study for finals. I read the book.
Right.
So like I just got to 10th grade. Not really, but it was. I read it in like 15 minutes. That's how magnetic I am, magnetized to this stuff I am. So, and this is all the beginnings of Battle Wagon. And he said, here, give me a call. So I call him, and when you think of Cigarette and Donzi, how do you think the person should sound? Like what do you think the vocal of these people should like? Don Aronow's son.
Yeah, like God.
How you doing? Right? Yeah, I want you to make me some boats. So I call. Hi, how are you? Right? And so we developed our relationship, and he wrote me a letter to graduate school, a recommendation letter, and our relationship blossomed, and I built these. So it was a continuation. So there's 11 of these model boats that were originally produced by his father. Then we went to, we did from 12 on, like kind of like a Shelby Cobra,
Right.
but in like a model boat. So I meet him, right? And this is hilarious. So I don't know who this guy is. I know he's from Long Island, and I'm a sophomore junior in high school, and I know I'm building radio control boats. So I bring up my friend and my brother to Jamaica, Queens. That's where he wants to meet, in Jamaica, Queens. I'm like, I don't know. Okay.
Let's take a break for a second. It's no big deal. I fix everything. We're good to go.
So now we're in Jamaica, Queens. I have my brother and my teammate, who's like 8 feet tall. And because you think, this is going to be. And he brings a guy that looks like he was out of The Sopranos, like a huge guy. And we just start laughing at each other because we both were sizing each other up, like, what's going on here? So then that blossomed into many boats. And then that leads to buying a Sutphin, when my first big boat. And so it was funny when, how do you tell the son of the designer of cigarette, all those companies, that you're going to buy a Sutphen? Because, I saved up money, paying for school, and then, okay, kind of want a Sutphen, because I was really interested in a 27-foot Magnum and then 28-foot cigarette. And then I called the insurance companies and how much is it to insure a 28-foot cigarette? And I think it was $8,500 for somebody my age. I think I was 20. I was still at that time I was still in college, and I think it was close to $8,500 to insure me in a 28-foot cigarette with small blocks. And I said, "Oh, okay, I don't sell enough radio control boats to do that." So I heard about a local man from Pennsylvania who raced a 41 Apache, and Ed Toth. So, and then I started researching that, obviously, and it was a yellow 41, so it was the 103, right? The backup boat to Kramer. So at that time, I was lifeguarding as well. So I was building boats, building duck hunting boats, radio control boats for Aaron Allen lifeguarding. I'm doing everything I can to pay for school and to pay for our independence to go boating, because it gives you independence.
Yeah.
It gives you this feeling of freedom, but it's a education, like how to use a line to pull over the compression of an outboard motor to get home so your dad doesn't kill you.
Right.
That's independence. So I'm lifeguarding, and I see this man with jeans on, and it's like 100-degree day in New Jersey, and he's towing this little girl with his belt, and he's going around the circumference of the pool. And there wasn't at that day, I don't remember how many people, but I was a lifeguard that counted all the kids because I didn't want to be that guy, you know. So I'm looking at this, and then he walks away from me. He's got a Predator shirt on. I went, whoa, this is giving me chills. Whoa. So as he came out, I said, "Can you tell me about that boat on your shirt?" He said, "Well, what do you want to know about it? It's in my garage." I said, "You're Ed Toth." He said, alive and in the flesh. And that was, oh my goodness, it could have been 20-something years ago. And so I said, "I'm really interested. I'm looking at your Sutphen," because he had a Sutphen, like play boat. "Okay, what can you tell me about it?" He said, "I should have never sold it. It was the best boat ever. Small blocks and crash boxes." Little did I know, my learning sailing and racing with sailboats where you don't have brakes, you don't have transmissions, that allowed me to be okay with crash boxes.
Right.
And so I saw the ad of the Sutphen, and then I researched who owned it first, and it was Ed Toth. And then before that, it was Teddy Courageous. It was called Crazy Greek? Nick the Greek. I think it was Nick the Greek. And then Steve Burke had it, and then he sold it to Eddie. So Eddie says, "I love it. It was great. Go buy it. It's an Army Jeep. It's an Army Jeep. There's nothing on it that will slow it down."
Right.
Thinking this could be good for me. So, I researched it, and then I researched Sutphen, the name Sutphen. And they built PT boats during World War II. So Elko Boat Company in Bayonne, their vice president was it Richard Sutphen? It was a Sutphen. I don't know if it was Richard, but it was a Sutphen who was the vice president of Elko Boat Company, who built PT boats.
No shit.
During the World War II.
That's interesting.
So I'm like, oh, this is good for me still because of Battle Wagon. You can't build a boat that's a weakling and name it Battle Wagon. You have to build some. So the Sutphen, then I went to go look at it. And that was the whole event in and of itself. The boat was on a trailer, and then I looked at the stringers, and everything was boxed in. And it was just built like a battleship. I said, "Okay, let's go for a ride." "No, we're not going to go for a ride." He was one of those guys. "Well, we might break it if we go for a ride." And I said, "Well, we're going to start it up, right?" I think the car alarms in Atlantic City are still going off from starting this boat up because it had dry exhaust.
Right.
And that was the best summer yet. So independence, right? You don't know how independent you are.
Now that was a 33?
That's a 30.
A 30. Okay.
A 30 was side by side, small blocks and crash boxes.
Right.
And then I think, so backing up to when I was first able to drive, it was like 17 or 16 and a half or 17. The first place I went to was a offshore performance place where I lived, because I was drawn to these boats. Everything about them, the sound, the smell, the way the drives are, just the look, because they look so sexy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just poetry, and it's just
Well, and
beautiful.
especially back then. You know, today, the boats today, the technology of today is amazing. But the look of the boats from then, it's unrivaled.
They're just gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that's what I was drawn to. And so I went to this place and I said, can I just look? I mean, I'm a kid, but can I just look at what's here? I'm just so drawn in. I'm just so amazed by this, the machinery and the beauty. And he said, yeah. So then I years went by and said, I'm interested in this Sutphin. And he said, I'll never forget. He said, it's got crash boxes, and just don't let it get ahead of you. That's what the owner of that place said. And I'm like, okay, but and so I equated that to sailing. You can't really stop. You have to have like one in, one out, one on. And I loved it. It was the best summer ever. But then it gets back to independence. So I called my dad. And I never got tattoos. And I'm a weakling. Needles scare the crap out of me. But I can imagine, like, if you're young and you want to get tattoos and you're like this kid living at home and you put the patch over your arm before you get it to see if your mom's going to yell at you, right? This was not.
No.
Okay.
I just showed up with them.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of my friends who had tattoos that were younger, they would put the patch and they would see if the mom went nuts, then they wouldn't approve of the tattoo. But if they were like, okay, all right, I'll go get the mom tattoo. So I put the boat shopper ad out, and I was like, Mom, I'm thinking of this. I'm thinking about this. How do you know? It's a 30-foot boat. It's the biggest boat that we would ever be a part of. It. Do not buy that boat. Whatever you do, you are not to buy that boat. Now, I was still living home. I commuted to college, so that independence. It wasn't that far away. That independence was tied to my ankle.
Right.
I needed that dependence from my mom and dad. And I said, but, I'm not a drinker, so it's not like I never use drugs. I don't go out partying crazy. And I don't have anything against that. It's just not me.
Right.
I like building stuff. So, and I'm not like, I'm not doing it to get like 50 million bikinis in a boat, because that's like what we saw around our way.
Right.
Do not get this boat. You're about to graduate from college. You need insurance. You need a reliable car. You need an apartment. You need. And
race boat.
And all I heard was, right? That's what I heard. And I remember having a conversation with my grandfather. And he's the only person that I cry over is my grandfather. He died when he was 94. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay, man.
And he said, if you want it, get it. It wasn't about the boat. This was like way before I bought the boat. But he said, if you want it, work hard enough and get it.
Right.
So I bought the boat. I made a deal, and I kept seeing the ad. It was 29,000. Then it went to 27. Then it went to 26. And then I just kept watching it.
Right.
And I'm taking business classes at St. Joe's, and this is stuff. I have an economics and business degree at St. Joe's, and you just watch. This is this is stuff that's in my textbook. This is good for me. I'm watching the price go down, and I'm go back to the Offshore guy, and I said, why nobody wants it? Well, it's got crash boxes. Well, what are those? Well, crash boxes, it's like a transmission, but it's not a transmission. Like, okay. Well, what that means is you're either in, it's a aluminum case with 3 gears. You're either in forward, neutral, or reverse. But you can't go through all those gears with the engines running. You have to shut the engine off, synchronize it, feel it. If it's not synchronized, then start the engine up and hope it starts. Right. Now, can you imagine if I told this to my mom that doesn't want me to? All right. So I make a deal for less than asking. And it's like it's one of the first major deals that I did. And I buy the boat. And then I call my dad. And it was one of those Nokia flip-top phones. And it wasn't even a hello exchange. The first thing that he said was, if you bought it, sell it back. I mean, this guy was better than the CIA and the Pentagon together. He knew. And because I didn't tell anybody. I laid the ad out, but then I didn't, it's not like I said, I'm going to go buy this boat. What do you all think? And he said, if you buy that boat, you got your independence. And it was the best summer that I ever had, and I spent it on couches and cheap hotel rooms. But again, that was the impetus to Battle Wagon, and it gave me my independence, and it allowed me to work on stuff and not be afraid. I remember one friend saying, taking it apart is the easiest thing. It's just putting it back together, and you're going to take that you're going to take that boat apart a few times.
Yeah.
And I remember blowing and driving, thinking, man, my world's coming into an end. I'm like, nope, let's get the forklift over here. I remember I worked for a marina too, so I was lifeguarding, working for a marina, building boats, and we used a gantry to pop the drive off. I'm like, and you could feel it clunk, 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 clunk going around. But it was the most fun. It was summer. It was great. The boat ran, crash boxes. And my sailing experience gave me like, okay, I need to judge where the current and tide, the wind are going. So if I shut off here, I'm going to be over there, and I have to be careful.
Right.
So it was just, it was fun,
Well, and it's really not easy. People don't realize it's not just as simple as shutting the car off, going from reverse to drive and firing the car back up. These are boats. 90% of the time, you've been wringing it out for an hour. The engines are hot. It's, you're finally coming back into the dock because you need fuel, or, it's the end of the day. You shut it off and you pull it into reverse and go to refire. A lot of times those engines don't kick back over for you. Yeah, there's a good shot of it there.
And you could go through that whole thing. So it took me a year to have my parents talk to me. And I love my parents.
Well, and so just to wrap this and put a bow on it, what year is it?
The boat, or what time this happened?
When it was happening?
2001, maybe.
Okay,
2000?
so you're not very far removed from the heyday, which was, you look now, you go on these Netflix specials and you watch like Cocaine Cowboys, right? And you see the offshore power boats all over the place. You see the old videos of the pits back then with Dave Branch's, love muscle going on back then, and Al Copeland, and right, the image of back then was very different of the image of today. So I could see if I was going to my mom and dad in the year 2000, who have no education about the sport of offshore or what that boat is or what it was born in, how you could simply relate it to a much worse style of life.
That's very interesting. It's a very interesting concept that I didn't think of. I'd like to think that my parents knew me and trusted me well enough that I wasn't going to be one of the cowboys.
Right.
But I think they thought, like, financially this might not be the best move. And I think they were probably right. But owning that boat...
Oh, you're right 100% of the time. Anytime a boat's involved, it is not a good financial decision.
No.
Ever.
But having that boat, owning that boat, opened so many doors for me
and windows
in business.
Yep.
And it taught me so much more that I wouldn't have gotten not having it. And I don't regret it. I kind of regret how, but there was no other way.
Right.
I really had to pull. The hardest thing was going to Michael Aronow and saying, I'm using the checks that you pay me to buy a Sutphin. And he laughed, But the picture is a year later, once my family finally welcomed me back. And so the boat's name was Toasty, which is a name that my dad gave to me at childbirth, because I wasn't supposed to live much longer past childbirth. I was not supposed to live much longer past when my mom gave birth to me. So my dad nicknamed me Toasty because I was syringed or given burnt to a crisp toast, and that gave me the fortification I needed to live past a certain point where it's like, okay, he's going to survive. So I named the boat Toasty. And then I think I put the race number as their wedding date.
Right.
Right. And I thought, okay, this'll get me back into good graces.
Right.
Or it might have been my birthday, I forget. But that photo is the day. So I
gotta laugh, because if that's not a picture of them coming around on that purchase.
Wait. So it gets better. So
we're looking at a picture for those of you that are just listening or that will watch and see me put this up in the podcast in editing. It's a picture of his mother and father in the Sutphin, and they definitely don't look sad.
And you can see, if you go back to the first page, you'll see how I purchased the boat. But so I went home, the boat was in the water, and I said, hey, Dad, you want to go for a ride? And my dad said, only unless your mother comes. No, there was no way that was happening. And this all leads back to the 21. So I said, Mom, would you please like to go for a ride? I think you're going to be surprised. I'm going to go really easy. And none of us in our family were all gas and no brakes. We were very respectful to anybody who went for a boat ride. So, excuse me. Surprisingly, she says, okay. And I'm like, the hell has frozen over.
Right.
The cows are jumping over the moon. All those cliches are happening right now. I have to capitalize on this. So I give him a boat ride. We go out. Are you familiar with Lucy the elephant?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Oh man, you okay. So we go out to Lucy the elephant so it's the Ocean Way. So Lucy, it's a big thing. It's an elephant on the beach. I'm being truthful. Like it's like a hotel. So we go toward the elephant. It's like Longport, Margate, Atlantic City, and my mom says, "Keep going." Now the boat's running at like $4,000, so it's like, I don't know, 40 miles an hour, 45. I'm not chasing the boat at all. So she leans over to me and says, "This is like a Cadillac." That's exactly what she says. This is like a Cadillac.
That's exactly what you want to hear.
Oh, so I knew, done. This boat is mine, right? So it already was. It wasn't like, it wasn't anything. So now a 20-something, 28-foot, it might have been a cigarette. It could have been a 35 Mistress. I forget, is coming back. So we turn around Atlantic City and we're coming back. And my dad, so it's a three-person bolster. In this case, it was a three-person bolster. So my dad sees this cigarette and they're pacing us. And my dad is hitting me. And he's in the navigation seat. I'm steering and throttling, and my mom would be where the throttle woman would be. And she's smaller than Betty Cook, right? That's my mom. But so my mom is a professor at an Ivy League school at that time. And she's about 5'0" on a good day with the wind behind her.
Right.
And so she's doing this, like you guys in your boat. And my dad, he's making my arm black and blue. And I'm pointing to him like, no, I don't want to do that. We finally did what I wanted to do here.
Right.
And so my dad he gave me another shot. And so my mom, there's a grab handle. So I said, put your hands on the grab handle. We're going to go just real simple. We're going to go. Just trust me. Right. I put her hands on the grab handle. She takes them off. So I get her hands and I put them on the grab handle, and she takes them off again. So I trimmed. I do the trim dance, right? Put everything trim. The steering wheel. Now I have a year of experience. I put my hands on top of her hands on the grab handle, and I go, and I show this guy that this girl that we're riding in has got the moves. And then I only go for a little bit, but it might have been like a city, like, because it's
right.
Ventnor, Margate, Longport. I might have go just, past Margate. And she's got the biggest smile on her face. And so we go in and she said, I get it. And
it's magic.
It's magic. And then, so when I developed this boat, I wanted people to feel safe. So like when I took my wife for a ride, and I get it now. Well, like, what is this macho stuff? What is this boat racing stuff? The loud noise. I get it. When I take my daughter for a ride out in the ocean and she falls asleep, like that, there's nothing in the world that is better than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I do that.
Right.
That's why I want more people to see when I build the 21. I want more people to first get into it, and that's why I offer it at a good fair price.
Right.
I know what the materials are. I know what labor is. Fortunately, I have the ability to do it in an area that I'm not paying exorbitant mortgage. I'm I'm on farmland in southern New Jersey. So, I'm able to offer a boat at a fair price that I want more people to smile. I want more people to take their wives and girlfriends for a ride,
right,
and not have to scare the crap out of them.
In a boat that'll run well.
Yep.
Which is, it's funny because it seems like it's always a give and take, right? You get in some boats, and like in the beginning of the show, you were explaining a bit of the noise in a boat, right? You can hear how solid something is, and it's funny when I say that to people who don't know, it makes no sense, right? But I said, listen, you can walk past any one of these boats and bang on them. They all feel the same. You go out and you hit a wave or two and you know what you're in. Like in my Phantom, for instance, when you come down off of anything, a boat wake or, it's a snare drum inside. It is so tight and hard that, people might think that that is the sound of it coming apart. It's not. That's how strong it is. And I've been next to your boat. I've never been in your boat. And I can tell you, just watching it rebound through the waves, it's like a basketball. It won't shovel the nose. It just looks like a good product, man. And I don't do this show to have just a million people come on. And, I really believe in what you're doing. So I just, I'm happy you came on and explained that, because especially what you're doing there with the Muddy Duck, I got to tell you, grabbed my heart more than anything. That is so cool to be getting new young boaters in, because it's so tough in this state. They don't even offer like any kind of program before that, like a jet ski program, which is good in my opinion. I think jet skis are probably the most unsafe thing on the water. But it's just interesting to me that's possible. I didn't know that was possible, to build something around a law like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure they'll put me in jail for even saying that. I try to get around something, but I want kids to have fun.
Well, they're ridiculous, and they have to realize that they're ridiculous. You can't. 16 years old. Do you know what 16 years old is today? Today, their whole life went by them already. They're on their phone at 6. They're playing, you know what I mean? They got real life video games at 8 years old. They know all about. You got to get them doing this stuff, or else they don't. And I know, because if it weren't for what we do, if it weren't for who my dad was, and I wouldn't know anything about this stuff. Life would have just passed me by, and I would have thought boating was like, charter fishing or something. It's so important. And that is just, I got to tell you, it might seem silly out of everything that you do, but to me, that's the coolest thing.
It's not. And take a look at the 18. So the 18, my next step up from that was, so I had a 13-foot whaler. The next step up would have been a Montauk.
Right.
And I went for a ride in a Montauk. And I don't like being wet, even when it's
killer. It's awesome.
So even when it's like 100 degrees out, I wear jeans and a t-shirt. I don't like being wet. So I went for a ride in a Montauk, and I was soaking wet. I needed a dry suit. It wasn't. I'm not knocking anyone. It has its place. It wasn't for me. I wanted something more dry. I came from a center console fishing boat that tracked well,
right,
and had a Seacraft, so it had a name for it. So I grew up on that. And this boat, this 18, you could take your hands off the wheel on a track.
Right.
In a quartering sea, and it's dry. It's rolled edge, so it's dry, and it has a center console, and the ergonomics of it are great.
Right.
I'm sold out. I can't even stock those for this year.
Really?
I'm sold out of the 18s. I make a certain number. I mean, I'm also in another business.
Right.
That helps augment my boating addiction.
Right.
But they're built solid. This boat is built the same way as the 12, as well as the 21 Savage. So they're all built. They have the same identical layup schedule. They're cored in the same way. The bulkheads are stout. Bulkheads are a little bit different. This has a fiberglass bulkhead system that's all foam filled. The 21 Savage does not have that. It needs to take a major pounding.
Right.
So I could still drop it off of huge heavy duty waves, and they're still great.
Right.
But that boat sounds tight like a snare drum, like you said. There's that sound that just resonates. It's that visceral tightness that, like, this is something solid.
Yeah. And one person that we talked a bunch about is Linder, and I think Rich Lors deserves his fair share of the credit of those projects. My brother has a Challenger, and we've got a Super Cat. It's basically a Super Cat motor. It's a 510 dry sump. All basic Super Cat parts. It runs in the high teens. I've been in it to 114. He's been in it to 116, 17. It's a death trap. Don't get me wrong. Certainly not a boat that anybody without his experience behind controlling one should ever even attempt. But I got to tell you, for a 21-foot boat, it's probably one of the more solid hulls I've ever been in. And I had the good fortune to talk to Rich at length about those boats and how they came to be. And it's exactly what you're saying to me right now. It had nothing to do with chasing the super boats or chasing to this or chasing to that. They built a product that they were proud of, that they stood behind, that to this day you can buy a 70s era Challenger and boat it today like it's brand new. And it's really just, it's good to hear you talking like that, because so many people in the industry now, is and again, like you said, not to knock anyone at all. I think anybody in this industry deserves props because it's a tough one. But today it seems to be so much about the turnaround and so much about the margins. Like, I laugh all the time. Like, if you want to get into building boats for margins, build pontoon boats. You sell them for $100,000, it costs you 10. But like, to do what you're doing and build a real product that's going to last and stand the test of time. That's the goal.
You say it better than I can. And I'm a builder. I'm not a good salesman. And I tell people that. Go for a ride. Let Joe or Matt take you for a ride. And I've done that. But that's
the best sale. That you can't talk anybody into this stuff, man. They got to feel it. It's like you said before with your mom and your dad and your wife, and you can tell them till you're blue in the face. You got to do it.
You have to take them for a ride.
Yeah.
And I am small enough to where I build a certain number of boats a year, then it's done. There's some people that say, no, I don't want to build a boat for you. And that's not important. What's important is I build a few boats enough to where I could totally customize. So you want a red bottom? Sure. You want a black hull sides? Sure. You want different type of interior? Absolutely. You want footrests wherever? Absolutely. So I like being able to do that and offer that to people and make it custom.
Right.
But you're right. Rich and Linder, they made a boat that was really something.
Yeah.
And this is a derivative of that, although it comes from that. And I make no misjudgments about that.
Well, and you shouldn't, because anybody who does try to claim that they have a 21 single outboard that runs good, it came from them. And I hate saying that because it almost kills the spirit of innovation. But when you have something that works as well as that, I mean, look at your boat. For what theirs is number one, right? So there you go, first time in the box, and you're happy with it, right? You put it in the bay, and not that you're not done with it, but you're happy with it because it came from such good stock. Like you look at the stuff that to me, they're like the forefathers. You look at what they did. There's only a few of them that are like that. Like Reggie's another one. Like there's a guy that just maybe not the same longevity as a lot of them were built for spec class, very light, very this, very that. Everybody has their own nitpick on Fountain, right? But there's a guy who really went to work. Really, really just went to work, and you have to respect the man. Because there's people who say, oh, well, he was a salesman. He wasn't Don, or Don was the salesman. He wasn't Reggie. You can take whatever you want away from whoever you want. Their work will show for itself.
Yeah, I don't get into that type of argument because there's no answer that will appease.
Right.
So I built a boat that needs to last. That this boat or the boats thereafter. So like I'm building 10 right now. I have to build 10. That's done. You will be able to hand them down to your grandchildren.
Right.
And that's what's important to me. And yeah, I'll make them be whatever they are, but I think it's at a fair price. Yeah. And I've heard those arguments. Well, this person was a salesman. This person was a showman. This person, that was all bravado. It doesn't matter. Look at the pictures of those boats.
Right.
Look, and they're still running.
Yeah.
Look, they are gorgeous. They run well. They're comfortable. That's what matters. Who cares about all that stuff? It's wintertime. We have nothing else to talk about. Let's order a boat.
Right. Right. And it is funny because you look there at like any one of Don's products or any one of Reggie's products. Put that in the water and take a picture of that running out on its tail, across the bay and whatever you want.
Take your hands off the wheel and watch the boat settle like your father said.
Yeah. And it is the most beautiful thing. Like you can't take anything away.
Do you know what I have to say? That this was hilarious. Over the summer, there was a bunch of us in the same area they're heavy hitters. I'm not a heavy hitter yet. They're heavy hitters. Twin step lip ship edition cigarettes, 2 Apaches, MTIs, all this stuff. Hey Christian, you want to come join us? We're going to do a photo shoot to Atlantic City. You want to bring your boat? Hell yeah. Okay. So we're running. I go out in a center console just to be mother hen, just to make sure everything is okay. These guys are running, and there's a 22-foot Donzi that's running. And I know once we get out into the ocean, it's game over.
That wouldn't happen to be Johnny Stanch, would it have been?
No, I don't.
Red and white?
No, I don't think it was that boat. This was a 22.
Because he was out torturing the bay all summer in a 22.
And who was Johnny Stanch again? I don't
know. You know, I heard the name once or twice.
So he, what did I do with? And it's funny. He is no, he wasn't the person. So, I know whatever Donzi, I can drag him out into the ocean and it's done. It's over. But we were playing with these big cigarettes, and they're doing 50. They're turning around Atlantic City. That's like the outside drag trip. Doing 50, then doing 60, and these guys are staying with them, just chipping over those waves, tippies, zap, 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 and then they bump it up to 60. Gray boat's still there. It's like there's that old time song where the little car can't get out of the way. So they do like 68, 70. Gray boat's still there. 75. These two gorillas. I'm sorry for busting. These two gorillas are still there. Everybody. I don't know if there's pictures of this, and I apologize. And I don't know if these guys will admit it. But the owner of they said, "What did you put? And is there another motor hidden in this boat?" And they're just staying there. Now, granted, this 38-foot boat they're comfortable. They can sip. They could sip champagne, and these guys might be getting bounced around a little bit because it was rough, but they're still hanging with these guys.
Yep.
So, why? I mean, I play with the bottom a little bit, but why mess up that? It was just it's poetry in motion.
Yeah, and
it was just hilarious to see this little boat pace these big boats at 70, and then the boat does 105 and just go bye-bye. It was funny, but it was fun. It was endearing to see that.
Yeah.
And when I see him go by, and the gray boat, so I'm just drifting right off of the beach, and the gray boat's with them, with all these big boys, and then 3 minutes later you see this Donzi just hung out,
right?
Nowhere near balanced, just bow in the air, and it's.
You need to measure, and it's funny because in a situation like that, that's exactly what you're doing. You're looking at your product and watching what it does in that kind of water against. It's not that they were against those boats. I mean, you're probably talking about SC Too Hot, some of those guys.
I don't know any names.
Red and Yellow Apache.
I don't know nothing.
Well, those guys down there, they have some real heavy duty equipment down there. I mean, when you're talking about those boys, you throw Kerbeck's name in the ring,
I don't know who that is.
Those boys down there, they don't mess around. They, it is so cool when they come through my neck of the woods. I live just north of you, and I'm always on the Mullica River. And when those boys roll up in the river, my heart gets happy because you finally hear some hardware. And what's cool is, like you say there, you have your 21 pacing them, right? Or 22, right?
I say 21.
21. They're pacing them, right? And that is so cool because what that should show you is that you sold it to the right two guys, first of all. And second of all, there's a boat that if you showed me that on land and I was the esteemed owner of one of those Apaches, I'd say one or two waves and that thing's going to fall apart, right? Nope. It's all about how you lay one up. And judging by, what you've been saying about that Savage, it sounds like you laid it up pretty solid.
Yes. Yeah. And I did. There was an afternoon where we played with the esteemed gentleman from the South, Johnny, the champ, Pop, and
the people's champ.
And he has experience.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, there's boating going through his veins.
Yeah.
And his dad was an ace fighter pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, so he can see. Not only is he good at what he does, he could see what's ahead of him because you have to have that in your genes in order to. I can't see, so I I remember in one of the 38 Bad Boys, he's like, "Do you see Larry? Do you remember Larry?"
Yeah, of course.
Larry said, "Do you see that channel marker over there?" I said, "What channel marker?" And we're in the Pamlico. So no, over there. Just put it on the left side of the channel marker.
Just do exactly as I say.
Just do what I say. And
I miss those guys, man. The crazy Cubans.
Yeah.
Is it Larry Fonteca and Willie Ross?
Larry Fonteca and Will Ross. And they know how to run boats. So Johnny, he just has it in his genes to be astute with speed and boating. So we went out there. We played with them. I played. I was the only person in the boat, and they were in something that had steam. And he doesn't. He's not too vocal when you do well. He's like, that boat runs. That boat runs. It's just that was nice to hear. I didn't need to hear it, but it was nice.
Johnny's very quiet in general. It's not unless you really know him to where he kind of opens up a bit. If he says anything to you, it meant something. You know, I grew up around him, and it was always so funny because he's like, you know, becomes one of your heroes. You know, I've been around him since 3 years old, 4 years old. And now it's funny because now that we kind of do the same thing, I've raced against him a bunch. We race in the same classes. I'm always looking to him for that. You know, you did good today, Boomer. You know, you could have did this a little better. You could have did nothing. Good job, buddy.
Yeah, that's a nice boat. Yeah, that's a nice boat.
With his cowboy hat
we
on.
literally caught him, he and Louis, looking at the bottom of our boat after Michigan,
Right.
when we had the checkered flag on the boat, and he's checking out the bottom of the boat. What are you doing under our boat? But it was nice to see that, you know, because he has experience.
Well, and he's genuine. He genuinely cares. He's a guy that there's a lot of people that claim to love this stuff. He really loves this stuff, man. Johnny's. I don't know if I could picture him doing anything else.
It doesn't matter because he's not going to do it.
You know, funny enough, him and my father grew up on the same street.
I heard that.
Yeah,
I heard that, and he was really quick with the single engine outboard.
Yeah, and it's funny because my old man never knew who he was, and he never knew who my dad was. And one day they just kind of were in, you know, conversation. And he's like, yeah, man, I used to, you know, right by Harvey Cedars and LBI. And my old man's like, that's right where I grew up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, where? You know, and they were like neighbors, you know, probably hung out all the time, just didn't know each other back then.
It's so funny that the degrees of separation. I have another friend, and he said they used to race against each other in little outboard, like Hydro Streams or whatever they were. And Johnny he always had something fast. And
Right.
so, you know, that's it. And they're right across the bay.
Well,
so
and there you go.
them.
So you just said it, you know, I laugh. My brother and I, we talk about this all the time about people that are buying boats to come racing that don't necessarily have the experience or, you know, and I don't care what you're getting into. Like people always like to draw the comparison like Supercat, right? A guy with $10 million buys $1 million boat and now he's a boat racer, right? It doesn't matter if it's that or if it's a Class 7 boat. Experience is experience. And what a lot of guys had coming up, like Johnny, for instance, probably had a little 14-foot Hydro Stream with a 150 on it or something that would run 78, 80. And if you really got one hung out and you really knew how to keep it up on the pad, it'll run 90s, you know, even for that day and age. That's where you learn how to handle a boat. That's the small stuff, like your product now, you know, where Matt and Joey are out there, and that's not an easy, as well as it runs. If you want to start to push the envelope, that's when you learn if you can drive, not when you get in a 388 skater. It's these things. And I laugh because we really, as much as we already have a developmental kind of program with Class 7, we should really be bringing some of these guys back down.
Yeah, because, I mean, developmental was Class 5 back in 2000 or 1999, 98.
Well, it was a great kind of series of events right there because 5 came in and was awesome for the time period because there was a lot of those boats laying. And back then you could run twin engines, outboards, it didn't matter. So it brought a lot of people in the sport. And it's funny because you mentioned him earlier in Henderson, because Henderson ushers in two very important things into offshore, where he brings to the forefront Class 6, which actually directly above our heads right now is the boat that he was going to bring to Class 6, the 24 Pantera. And then shortly after, you and him bring in Class 7. And if it weren't for that, look around at some of the racers in some of these classes, you'll start to find they all started in 6 or 7. It's unbelievable.
And some of them are coming back down to 7, like you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just a fun class. It's the camaraderie's there, the water is there, the venues are just getting better. You know, it's a fun experience.
It is. It's cool. And you know what I think really brings it all back around is you do have these operations like you have going on. And I think it'll inspire more of this.
I speak to a few builders regularly from the South. And I said, build some boats. I spoke to John maybe a year or two ago. I said, build some boats. Let's have some manufacturer wars. Build some boats. And I don't know how that was received. It wasn't, I don't think it was received negatively. I just think that there's no wrong way it could go. Let's build some boats, get some more people.
Competition's a good thing.
I enjoy it. I know last year there was a situation where there was rumor. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn by saying this, but there was rumor that there was a petition that we didn't want a boat in Class 7. And I never signed the petition. And I know that Joe and Matt didn't sign the petition. So much so that I said, do not sign that petition, because you want to beat somebody fair and square, regardless of if they're a foot or 2 feet bigger or have a bigger engine or whatever the case may be. Beat them, and then there you go. There's your signature. If you want to beat them. And so I'm a competitive person, and I'm a boat builder. So it doesn't. And I'm also an economist and a business person and a thinker. So if I sign a petition, that's like, well, I don't think I can hang with something better or bigger or whatever. No, let's see what it does.
Right.
So, I thought that was, there's always going to be rumors and a little bit of stickiness, but there doesn't need to be.
Right. But you have to look. I mean, I'm a fight fan, right? I'm a MMA fan. I'm a boxing fan, right? So, like, to me, who's Tyson without Holyfield? Who's Mayweather without your Canelos? Who's Canelo without Triple G? Who's Pacquiao without Mayweather? Right? These guys that are titans, you can't tell unless they fight titans. You can't have your boat and then not race a super boat. You can't have that and not race a progression. You can't have that and not race a kryptonite.
Those guys have been doing it longer. They have a lot more hulls under their skin, and that's okay. I'm here to be competitive and see what my stuff can do.
Right.
If I beat you, great. That's what I want to do. I want to beat you. But if I don't, all right, let's go back
harder.
to the
yeah.
Let's go put another Mako fishing boat motor with 900 hours on it.
You know what I think really changed with that is you used to have a lot of manufacturer support, and there's a million reasons.
It takes a lot of money to do this.
Money and liabilities, and there's been a lot of things that went on over the years that reduced their presence in the sport. But nowadays, I think it's so difficult with, like, for instance, why don't you have brand new Mercury Power on yours? Can't afford it. It's
but there's a little bit more than that.
Well,
though.
no doubt, but I mean, for the most part, I can't afford it. I can't, like, let's say today, I had your boat and I wanted to put a motor on it and put it up for sale. The motor's 5 times what the boat's worth. The way pricing is set up anymore, and
you make a very good point, and that's why I am not an engine rep. I am an OEM for a certain manufacturer, but my insurance is set up to where I can put anything. I could put a Tohatsu on it. I could put a Suzuki, whatever you want, a Merc, a Yamaha. I could do whatever. That's how I just sell hulls.
Right.
If you want an engine or pre-rig, we can do that. But I don't say you must have green when everything is green. So you're right. It does price it out. And that's why I don't want to be the Class 7 rep. I have no desire to be that. And I know we haven't spoken about that. But if I sell a new boat and somebody wants a new motor, that might not work unless it's a 200.
Right.
So, and then they're going up against Goliaths with big. So, and I know I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but that 225 with 800 hours that was in Michigan, it had like 150 pounds of compression, or so, it was very low compression. So that 225 with low compression, what is that? Is that a 200?
Right.
Is that a 175? And they're doing well. So I'm kind of like, maybe we can put 200s on these boats and see what it does in Class 7.
Right.
And, we'll see where it lays out. But
I think that the vision for the class, I think we had a short conversation about this in Morehead City. I don't know if you were in that meeting I did down there or not.
I was listening, but
it was very, very just, it was more focused on the hot foot thing than anything else. But I did kind of ask, like, where does everybody see this going? Do you want to go a little faster in your bracket? Do you want to try to develop a spec? And it's funny because it was almost as if nobody had ever thought of that before I said it.
I think of it every night before I go to bed.
I think that class would be so special with a 200, just a spec cheap package.
I really wish Henderson was right next to me because he could corroborate what we were talking about 6 years ago, and that we wanted a maximum of 250. That's what we wanted. Now, I'm not saying this because I think this should be gospel. I like being on the dock watching, and whatever happens, I'm going to build a boat for it. Whatever happens, I'll build a boat for it. So it doesn't matter to me. But we designed, when we first were starting out, when I wasn't, I was a manufacturer, but not really, like wink, wink manufacturer, a 250 everybody can go find a 250 or 225 max. And then over the course of time in racing, people start massaging stuff. Oh, I need bigger steam. Coming off of Michigan, and we're pulling boats out, and we're doing well. We got that flag. We overheard, I need bigger steam. And this has 800 hours on it.
Right.
So I understand that. I understand that people want to have big steam. But I also understand that if we want more people that can get that education and can get that seat time, I don't know if,
Well, you know what's hard about it is the flip side of the coin. So like the other side of it, and the argument that I do also hear, is that a lot of people that got into this class because it's a double-edged sword, where they can go racing with this boat and then they can put their other prop on it and go have fun.
Everybody in 7, I think, does it.
Right. So I hear the calls for updated equipment. I hear the calls for the 4-strokes, for, stuff with warranty and all that stuff, which I do agree with, because I think that that's what's growing the class, is that they're dual purpose, that a lot of people can buy this boat and sell it to the family as this is our weekend boat, but I'm going to race it a couple times a year. And I think that it would be good to have the reliable packages of today allowed in the class. But to the other side, I also agree that if you make the class unaffordable, then, it kind of defeats the purpose of the class. Now, you have to determine what unaffordable is, because as you just said, you can take that motor that's huffing past the rings and go run with anybody on the course, because that's the beauty of the bracket, right? And that's what I always enjoyed. Like my green boat, when I went from 6 to 5, I ran the same motor from 6 to 5. I did it once and came home and repowered. You know what I mean? Because I knew I had to, I needed a little extra snuff. I'm in a shorter boat. I need, you have that ability with the bracket. When you go to spec, it's hard, because you'll have a lot of guys that rig a boat that for them is affordable and they can get in this and they can do this. And then once they get into the sport, they realize, man, I need knuckles here and knees there and glass work here.
If they want to win, if they want to keep going.
Right. So it's like hard. How hard do you push that? You know what I mean? Like,
and that's exactly it. If you want to win, you got to push. If you want a championship, you got to push. And you're 100% right. It would be nice to see agreement on something so that people know where to go. I guess, last year was really a difficult year because of the pandemic,
right?
Where, it's people were having more fun with their Class 7 boat than they were racing.
Right.
So it's just,
the flip side of it is, I think you'll never see the class with, Verados or anything like that. I mean, really the only option at this point is some of the V8 Mercury stuff, stuff like that isn't too heavy for some of these transoms and, all that good stuff. But I just wonder if that'll become the reason, right? Because you have let's say, if you look at the history of this class in the last 2 or 3 years, right? If you go to the record book and look at the top 3 or 4, it's a lot of the same boats, right? And what that is the guys that have the most time in them. And for people that aren't educated with the sport that want to look at that, they say these are the guys that spent the most money, right? You go to if you go to like Joey Riley, what they see now is this 22 progression with this beautiful 250 on it. And, they see this package. They don't realize that he started in a red boat called Elevation, right? With a V8 Johnson on it, right? They don't know that. They don't know where he came from. They don't know his time in the class. And I'm not just speaking about Joey because he's my friend. There's a multitude of them. Nick, Matt, and Joe. I mean, Johnny Donnelly. These guys would kick your ass in any boat. It don't matter what boat they're in. So you just wonder if that'll become the stigma. Well, if these guys power up, so that they have their king of the cut motor. You know what I mean?
So that is very good that you segue into that. And also on my way here, because it was a really long drive, is how can we get more people interested, and then how can we be successful? And that's not an OPA question. That's a Class 7 question, which I mean is going on a little off the rails, but I'm okay with it. And I think if we are to, even though we are a family, we have to treat people as though a family. So I know I sold a few boats, and if they want to race, great, but I want them to be treated like, hey, come on in, let's try this.
Right.
I wasn't at the first race for the gray boat, so I think they were pretty well received because they're a racing family. But if there's families that aren't, hey, come on in.
Right.
And And so like I'm telling you, come on in. I'll help guide you. I'll put your hand in somebody else's hand, like the Smiths, and say, look, you'll be well received,
Right.
and this is what you can do to be successful. And I think a lot of what is perceived, and I know you're not asking me this, but I apologize if I'm
No,
speaking
not at all
ill.
good.
Is that if people are a little bit more reserved and a little bit more inquisitive as opposed to being aggressive, it opens us up to more people in the sport.
Right.
And that funnels into other things.
Right.
And there can only be good for that. And I've been a part of that on both sides. And I want to build boats that win.
Right.
In a fashion that's like, that's a wholesome fashion.
Right.
I'm competitive. I have no desire to do stuff that's not in the rules. I mean, you always want to push the boundaries, but I don't have any desire to be more than what I have right now in the 21. It's not like I'm building the 21 wanting to build a Super V. I don't. I know where my position is on the totem pole, and I enjoy building the 21. I want to build that right. And I think that's important. And if we have other people saying, okay, here, take a look at this. I know there's some people that can't afford my 21, because really racing in Class 7, it's a budget conscious bunch of guys and gals. Guys, are there any women yet?
There's a few that are floating around right now. I know that Done Deal, Steve Papp was building one for his daughters.
Wonderful. Oh, that's right. Yeah. And I believe I spoke to a potential customer last week that he wanted to get his daughter involved or something. Right. So I want people to feel comfortable approaching.
Right.
I don't care what people think about me. I really don't. I want them to think good of me. But if I feel like I rub somebody the wrong way because I'm being, I don't want to say aggressive, but like, hey, how are you? My name's Christian. Let me show you about this boat racing deal. I'm not going to be apologetic about that.
Right.
Do you want to buy one of my boats? Great. But I think that's important for people to know, is that they can feel comfortable approaching us. This is right. It's like, if you have a problem with alcohol or drug abuse, you can come to us. But like, if you want to get involved in this sport, you should.
We need a racing hotline.
Yeah.
You know what's good is, and don't get me wrong, for as much good, there's an equal amount of bad. But that Class 7 Facebook page.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's, it grew. And it's huge, and there's so many people with single outboard boats that love going in there and chiming in and asking questions and asking these guys who are really competitively doing this. I mean, what are you doing, right? And I think that that's such a great thing that there's that community. But you're right; it has to maintain a positive outlook.
I'm not going to tell people how to act, because I'm not no one's daddy.
Right.
But I think that we should think before we press the keys.
Right.
And especially when it's February. And people are doing nothing.
There's a little bit of leeway to be given. Being in this sport for as long as I have, I've seen it from every direction now. I've been at every angle. I've been at it at the bottom, at the top, in the middle, outside, inside. I've seen it, right? And this is what happens when you get to an off season. Okay, everybody gets home, they get bored, they get crazy. They, instead of calling Boomer because he doesn't agree with my idea, I'll call Christian because he does, and then we'll talk to each other for 3 months before we argue with Boomer, right? You see how this goes. Well, now imagine we've been doing this since 2019. I mean, just trying to get something rolling through COVID. So for as much as flies around, you pay attention to it, you keep your finger on it. But,
I just build boats.
It'll subside.
Yeah, I don't, that stuff is so ancillary to what I do. It's not positive for anyone. And like you, I learned the negative drawbacks when I worked for another powerboat company, and I saw the beef that didn't need to be.
Right.
And it was like, we could have so much more fun. We could have so much more camaraderie. Yeah, we're competitive. We want to kick each other's butt, but let's shake each other's hand and
we have so much to offer each other. If we continue taking from each other, none of us have enough for that.
And that plays into society. I'm not going to do politics. I don't want to do that. But it plays into, it's like a microcosm of what really is going on.
Right.
And all we need to do is like just take a pause,
relax,
and we're all going to try to have fun in these boats.
Right.
It's not.
Oh, and I'm seeing it too. Everybody's seeing it. It's the status of the world at the moment, whether it's political, non-political, whatever, the answer everybody has is to argue anymore. It's if you didn't like my guy and I don't like your guy and we're no longer friends anymore. And, you know, that stuff is so bad for society. It's just so not good.
Nick, if this were 2003, 2004, I wouldn't be sitting here. And I think it's because you're smart and other people are smart. And like, okay, let's talk about stuff. Let's talk about our love for racing.
Right.
Your visceral commentary on exhaust, and I keep reiterating this, but like the way when you start up those 525s or 540s or whatever they are, and you feel it in here, you're like, ooh,
Are
this
you talking
is nice.
about the thing I wrote about Moorhead?
Yeah.
So it's so funny because I've had so many people come up to me about that. For the people listening or watching that don't know what we're talking about, it was a Facebook post. I didn't write this for a newspaper. I didn't put it anywhere. It was just a Facebook post of thoughts that I had leaving the race site. And it was the God's honest truth. It came from the bottom of my heart. We had just went through all of the COVID things and whatever that entailed, and finally went through, from what do we have, 11 races on the schedule. Out of 11, 9 of them canceled. And we never thought for a second that would ever happen. Truthfully, we thought we'd lose some of the early ones. We thought we'd lose some of the ones in the Democratic states that were keeping, their thumb on things, Jersey being one of them. And we thought for sure we would still have a good bulk. But to whittle down to, we ran an invitational and lotto, and we had the first Moorhead City, which was slated to be the only one. And people don't realize that either. Jeff McCann and his staff down in Moorhead deserve a pat on the back. And I don't know how to give it to them, because what he did for us, we went down there for the first one, and that was supposed to be a one and done. We had Inglewood still lined up, still swinging, trying to run the event. Well, we literally got the call in Moorhead that it's probably not looking so good, So we had let Jeff in on that and just kind of explained, there's a situation in Inglewood, and in the next week or so, I'll update you, maybe we can do this again, right? Jeff called us the day after and said, I don't care what Inglewood says, we're doing this again. So he fired it up. Dude, I'm telling you, that was September 11th. We scheduled that race for October 21st. There was 45 days to get that whole thing funded again, to get all the permits through, to shut the streets down, get the police involved. I don't think people realize the hard work that went into that. So when I wrote that piece that you're talking about, that wasn't just my happiness of a successful event. That was struggle. That was real pain. That was the thing that you love the most in life, being played with by politicians that don't deserve it. That was real love, man. And I hope that if I didn't even realize that had impacted, so many people, I hope people really took away from that what I was trying to say of, listen, at a time where they were burning American flags, I looked out into that spectator fleet, and that's the God's honest truth, man. It was countless.
It was packed. So I was thinking the same thing as I was driving here, because it was like a 15-hour drive. Not really. I came from Philadelphia, but I was thinking the identical thing, that when I was commentating on that race and I was watching, the spectator fleet was huge. And then on the street, it was huge. You're exactly right.
And it was nothing but American flags and happiness and little kids. And you know how good that felt to just break out of the shit you see on the news every day and just get back to real life. It was so nice, man.
Turn your phone off.
Exactly.
That's what I do at work.
Right.
If I'm at the shop, I will turn my phone off.
Yeah.
Not for my children and my wife, because sometimes, if something needs to happen, I turn my phone off. It's just, you drive yourself ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
it's just, I think people need to check their passions, and enough of all these Facebook scientists that now know how a vaccine is supposed to be made, or
this is going into politics. I don't want to go into politics.
It's not, but I'm so tired of these armchair experts. Dude, show me your boat. What have you done in years? Don't tell me about these government coups.
Well, that's just it. I think I said, okay, this is class 7. Let's see what even though I'm a builder, I want to see other people's stuff. Velocity, Superboat, whatever, Redline, whatever it is. Show us what you're working on so that we see what you're bringing out.
Right.
And I got a little bit of static from that.
That's all right.
Guys, just want to see your boat. I don't want to see a 40-foot boat. I want to see a class 7, 21, 22, whatever, 23,
right,
24. with a single engine outboard. What are you doing? Stringers, fuel tank, whatever. And that's we're all in it. Exactly. We're all in it to have some fun on the water.
Right.
We're competitive. Okay, we get it. We're competitive. So let's see. Let's see what's going on.
Yeah.
So
Well, we got some good stuff lined up, man. There's we've announced the Kilo run in Baltimore, which I think will be really fun, and I'm particularly excited to see what Class 7 does for that. I'm going to leave that one up to you guys.
don't ask me. I'm
not asking you nothing.
I'm an observer.
I'm not asking anybody nothing. Whatever you show up with and decide you want to run that Kilo run with, I will cheer you on.
Put my wife and little girl in that.
I'm
boat.
very excited for that. I think there'll be a lot of support. It's been a long time since we've had an actually sanctioned Kilo run. We've done some speed runs, but this one's backed by the UIM. It'll go through the IOC and be a legitimate world record. If or any are broken, which I would assume there will be because I know you guys. And there's just so much good stuff to come of all this. Our race schedule is scary to us who actually have to travel to it. But for the fans, this is going to be a great year. We have the 6-race series returning. We are still working on that with P1. It is the APBA Championship Series. Aside from that, we have 4 other races that are all fantastic races that are long time events. And I think there's really something for everybody in this year. And I'm just excited to get back to work. I'm excited to get back behind a wheel of something. It's been too long. It's been way too long. This isn't a sport that can endure this kind of, dormancy. We really need to get back to work, and all this crazy stuff will subside. Because that's 100% where it comes from.
As soon as they get to the race course, hey, how are you? How you doing?
Exactly.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Forget all the other dramatics, all that stuff.
Well, because we all love each other, man. We all love what we do. It's so funny. Somebody I've been trying to get on here for
Who is it?
months, if not years, is Augie. And he's just so busy right now. I can't ever nail him down. But like, whenever I talk to him, it gets put back in check. Like, man, I love these guys. I do. I love you guys. I can't go another year without it. So we'll be back. We'll be back in a big way. And I'm just excited to see what you guys got for this year.
I think more people are going to come out to take a look too. I think people are dying to get out of their houses.
Well, and what's nice is this new, live stream was always looked at as like the stepchild of television, but anymore, nobody's watching television. So our live stream numbers are up.
They're huge.
The downloads are up. All of our social media pages are up. There's a lot of good momentum. You just have to weed through the crazy shit that flies at you sometimes. But there's a lot of good coming to 2021, man. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, it's just going to go up.
Yeah, like there's just, for instance, right? There's I've talked about him once before on the podcast, so I'm sorry for anybody who's already heard this, but in St. Clair, Michigan, actually it was in Port Huron, Michigan. I met a kid. He was I believe he was 11 years old at the time, young kid. And when you meet somebody, from the jump that they're just good people, right? And I met this young man and his father, and Evan and Ed, and we spent the weekend together. He just wanted to see everything I was doing, wanted to see where the boat went, how it worked, So I took him with me everywhere we went. I watched the races with him. When I got out of the boat, I went and found him and watched my old man race. And so it was just a good weekend. And I felt good about that because so many people did that for me at that age. And so we were going to the awards and they were hanging around. And I said, well, what are you doing? Why don't you come with us? So we got the trophy and I gave it to him. And he said to me, nah, man, I can't take your trophy. Like to him, that must have been like,
Huge.
The Lombardi trophy, right? So I said, nah, man, truthfully, I didn't want to say like,
we got 50 million of them
they're
back home.
collecting dust, But, I said to him, listen, if you really feel that way, I said, what'll make me even happier is St. Clair is in 2 weeks. I said, why don't you bring it home with you and bring it back in St. Clair? I said, and when we get there, I'll give you another one, right?
Oh.
As a joke, right? Well, don't you know we go there and we win. So here I am, fucking Superman, right? He gives me the trophy. I give him the trophy. We take nice pictures together. And I've stayed friends with his father on Facebook over the years, but never spoke, just, friends. And so he messages me a couple of months ago and he goes, hey man, remember that little kid you met? And he sent me a picture. He's got a 21 Wellcraft with a 383 stroker in it. And he's like hell bent to go with this thing,
You planted the seed.
Dude. And that is it to me, that is the most important thing you can do. That is, it's not about the egos on Facebook or whose boats are faster or what's better or who won this or won that. It's an everything deal. You can't have it if you take one piece out.
I feel kind of bad that of all the good stuff that we do and that what this sport does and boat building, we're talking about Facebook. You know,
Isn't it
like,
crazy?
We're adults,
But that's the whole world
and
anymore.
we're talking about a social media page where adult people are, you know, they get a little sticky with other adult people, and that's what's like. We went from wearing wet sweatshirts to weigh a boat down. It was the impetus to build a boat company to like the yappers on Facebook. Like, all right, you know, I feel bad about that. And if anything comes from this, we're all racers. Let's race.
Dude, the best thing you can do at this point is just not acknowledge it. It's, you know, it's a weird time, and I feel like people may need to hear this. You know, judging from the amount of these conspiracy theories that I see being posted and you know, the way everything's been going, everybody's got to really, really relax. Like, relax. It's okay. You know, look, the president might be a guy you like. The president might not be a guy you like, but in 4 years, it's going to change. It's, you know, relax.
We will be okay.
We'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's the greatest country on earth. You know why? Because they have powerboat racing. You know, and if they shut this one down, I'll go to one where they race boats. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. You know, and I'm not lying. I am so excited to get through these next couple months and get back.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, just as you were talking about that, I like the idea of giving people rides. Like my insurance, I can give people rides.
Right.
So I can give that 11-year-old who's now however old he is, give him a ride.
Right.
You know, I can do that. I don't know if other people can with their insurance, but I could give somebody a ride, put a smile on their face. I could run down the beach and scream and wave to everybody, you know, like, yeah, ho, ho, you know, wide open. And I think that will make people happier. You know, it really does.
You know,
that
where
exhilaration.
You know where I can't wait to get back to out of everything is the Michigan swing.
So I've heard a lot about that race, and unfortunately I haven't been there. But Rob, he talks about that.
You know what it is? It's not just St. Clair or Michigan City or Elk Rapids, or if you go north and you get in that northern Midwest area, right? I don't know what it is, but they love horsepower. They just love it. I had guys teaching me stuff about the motor in my boat. You know, this came from that, and this block was made because it didn't fit in this, so they had to make that. They worked at Ford plants. They worked at, you know what I mean? You got to remember where you're at. I mean, you're just north of Motor City.
Yeah.
You know, so
is this the place where it's like the city parade, the parade down the main street is like 10 deep?
They have signs. They have signs for their favorite teams, and that's Michigan City, Indiana, and it's right on Lake Michigan. And I'm telling you, that swing, the young adults that come to the race, the kids, I'm so happy to be able to do that again. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about, like, you hear a lot about Key West, right? And like 80% of it is talking about Thursday, Saturday, and not Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Why? It's a party. It's a party. They like to bring their friends. They bring their family. They're all happy about being in Key West, so they're not so mad about your racing habit. And you know how it goes, right? But that's not the real shit, man. It's just not. The real stuff is come north with us. Come to St. Clair once. Shake some of those people's hands. Take pictures with their kids. Watch how happy you can make somebody. For what?
That's really
who are we and what are we doing?
That's why I build.
Right.
Because I want to see, like, when Joey does not smile.
He does when he's in a boat.
But you could get a smile out of him.
Yeah.
And that softens my soul, you know, when that happens. And, you know, when these kids, and they are, Joe and Matt are young, much younger than I am, and when they come back and they're happy, and they're adults and they're happy, that makes me proud. That makes me like, okay, you know, let me build some more.
Right.
And, you know, especially with the little 12s and building and having a kid that what normally, like a whaler, a 13-foot whaler, to go buy a 13-foot whaler is very, very expensive, especially if you buy it out of a show or a showroom.
Right.
But like, you're exactly right. Make these people happy.
Yeah.
Like we're in the business of making people happy. You know, racing around a course makes you happy. Like, let's just, you know, I think it's a lot of fun. And that's when I was that age, that's we could never afford new stuff.
Right.
And we always we always worked on our own stuff. You can't afford to pay somebody to do it. So that's when I learned at that young age, like if I want this, I got to learn some stuff.
Yeah, man.
And it's just,
listen, I get it all the time because people where I was growing up would see the Viper, and then my old man bought back in 1987 bought a 34 SS Scarab, the Super Sport, right off the showroom floor. But back then, money was different, times were different. The Viper, people don't know that was a $10,000 buy, and it was just a lot of hard blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. They see the Fountain. They don't know that Reggie made Pop a special deal because he didn't want to scoop him off a race course one day. They don't, they think like there's just big bucks behind us. And it's not. I mean, why do you think this shop is open year round?
Well, that's something else. Are you hungry? Do you want one of those?
Yeah.
I mean, you can.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we're going to get back to that because I truly believe that. But so what I did. Cupcakes for the cupcakes. That's for all the Facebook people. We got cupcakes, and they're Valentine's Day. They're really good. So I told you I grew up in South Philadelphia, and a lot of things like we had to get away from South Philadelphia, but some of this stuff is excellent. So I brought some pizza and some cannoli. So leave the gun, take the cannoli. But like you're right.
Those look like some nice cannolis, man.
So chocolate, vanilla, and chocolate chip. Have your pick. So I mean, this is a taste of where I'm from in South Philadelphia.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that.
So we grew up there because we had to work on our own stuff.
Right.
And when you come to my shop, you see I'm in the bilge. No, not yet. I'm going to have a slice of pizza. I don't have dessert before I have dinner. And I'm sorry if you had. I wanted to surprise you. I was going to ask you if you had dietary restrictions, but I figured whatever.
Nah.
It is what it is.
We're powerboat racers.
Right.
I can run on anything.
So we had to work on our own stuff. You'll see me measuring out, datoing the transom, doing stuff. You have to do that. You can't. It's like we could not afford to buy new stuff or have a new engine. I mean, and I think that's why I'm so drawn to the family, the Lauer family, is because they're just like me.
Right.
And I think you're very similar in that, I came here thinking that half of your place was going to be in Florida, and your brother and your I'm like, whoa, hey guys.
Yeah, no, man, we work.
So I that warms me. Like, okay, this is where I need to be.
Right.
And it's just got to work.
Yeah,
and,
man. It's also a sport that you can run yourself right out of. And you see that all too often. I call it the 3 and out. Most of these guys come in a couple of years, they're out because
got to pace yourself.
Can't hang it. You have to. You get in the habit of when a drive blows, you order a new one, right? I mean, just think that's a $15,000 to $20,000 commitment, depending on what you're running on the back of your boat. Whereas if you just took it apart, it's a $2,000 fix. And there's so much of that can be done in this sport. The green boat was my education. My dad bought that when I was actually 13 years old, and I didn't know anything about it. Never told me about it. It was like a surprise kind of. And when I found out I was racing it, you got to remember I'm 14. I couldn't drive to work, or I couldn't. That was my brother. Took care of that boat for years, and when it finally came time, when I was 17 and I could drive and I could get here every day, and I took care of that boat day in and day out with my partner Matt.
How much older is your brother than you are?
12 years.
He's 12 years older than you?
Yeah, 12 years.
Whoa.
So, that was a eye opener, because not only was I maintaining my a pleasure boat, but this was a war machine, and I'd go through that boat, with a fine tooth comb, because I had so much pride, so much, that boat afforded me so many things in life. I owe that boat more than it owes me. And
you owe your family.
Exactly. Well, and, I think it was inevitable, but to have that kickstart was so beautiful, man. And it was especially cool to me because, like, I watched that boat go through all the owners. I watched when Cue Ball had it to when, Carbone bought it, and how it just, the stages to when the teak cabin door came out and those pods went across, and I watched that boat become what it was. So to be the guy that, in my opinion, took the torch and carried it, that meant the world to me. And you don't get that by, you know, exchanging credit cards and ordering stuff. And you gotta really go through the motions.
There's a lot of that in 7 where I remember in Michigan, and I don't think it was anybody that we know or anybody that we don't know in Class 7. And the oil was drained out of the lower unit. We didn't know because the oil was taken out in a pan and then the plug put back. And then all the vacuum lines on the port side were all sliced. I don't know if you're familiar, if you knew
No,
this.
I'm not.
So the boat was sabotaged. This was even before the we had literally 15 minutes of runtime on this boat. And Joey or Matt or whomever, maybe Rob, pulled the cowling and saw all the vacuum lines sliced. Oh, no. And I think it might have been Mr. Impressia or someone helped to put all the vacuum lines back. We didn't know to check the lower unit.
Right.
And I just thought that sportsmanship, you know, there's somebody who knows how to turn a wrench.
Right.
And he helped us. And he didn't need to, but I think it was the right thing for competitors in the same class.
Right.
To do that.
Now, that was an issue. I don't remember if it was 2018 or if it was 2019 where a string of races, Class 7 boats had issues. Now, I will say that for the most part, it was the same boat. And I won't, say names or, I don't want to get like drama fired up that doesn't need to be there or whatever, because I don't know what actually ultimately came of it. But I would say to them, I've been racing a lot of years. The amount of times I've seen somebody's boat actually get sabotaged is so far and few in between.
I don't think it was anybody in the OPA.
Well, and so this is kind of what I get to. I said, where it comes from, I'm not jealous of you. The people you race against aren't jealous of you. They just want to beat you, and they don't want to beat you that way. It doesn't mean anything. It's usually somebody at home that is a little jealous of seeing you run around on the bay or seeing you with some new stuff. And, and it's really sad that happens because
I remember the first time that I, if we have the time to talk about it, I remember the first time I was pulling a motor out of a bad boy 32. Yeah, it was the 32 with Tony. And I learned so much from Tony. But I pulled the fuel line off to pop a motor out. And I think it was like a Pat Musey 9 something. This is when we were keeping up, single engine V-bottom was keeping up with Nesquik.
Right.
And I heard ting, 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 come out of the fuel line. I was like, this does not sound right. And I looked at it, and it was shotgun pellets.
Right.
I was like, well, this doesn't sound right. This is, Tone, what do you think of this? And, it wound up being nothing. But we were like, okay, let's put a lock on the fuel fill or take the boat. I remember, and that's what's sad.
Right.
And we shouldn't have to go through that. And you can't point fingers. I have no interest in pointing fingers because I really could care less.
Right.
Just, take care of your stuff, put locks on your stuff, and check the lower unit oil.
Right.
But, it's what I would like to reiterate is the camaraderie. Like, okay, I see you're broken, or I see somebody fiddled with your stuff. Let's put it back together again so you can race with us.
Right.
And I think that's the important aspect of it is, okay, we want to race. Let's make some moves here. Like, we're going to have a great 2021 season. We're in the 20s. This is the roaring 20s, like literally roaring 20s with these badass boats. And it's got to go up.
Yeah.
So,
and it is. It is. It's going to be a weird climb because, starting out from, the exit of 2019 to the beginning of 2020, there was such a wave of momentum behind the sport. We averaged at the 6-race series, we averaged 66 boats. That's an average. So we had as many as 76 in Inglewood. Now, when have you ever seen, even in the 60s, when's the last time Key West had 60 boats? If I had to guess, 02, 03. You know what I mean? Never mind averaging 60s and then knocking down an almost 80 number in the Worlds. There's a lot of boats now.
So what do you do to sustain it? What do you do to keep it going?
It's economy. And that's my opinion is it's economy. When the economy does well, boats are an option. And that's just, one of the unfortunate aspects of being in this sport while we scratch for funding. Until a real big name sponsor comes along and sees the value in this blank canvas that is Offshore, we'll have to fund it out of our own pockets. And we can only do that if we have the funds in our pockets. It's not easy. You know, there was no coincidence that 2019 came along in one of the best years this economy's known in decades. So it's a a hope and a prayer at this point. But I think that there's so much positive movement in the sport. There's so many people that aren't going to miss a race, don't care what quarantines I got to do, or you're going to have that this year. You're going to have troubles, but people aren't going to miss the events.
I think North Carolina was a really good litmus test because that's, I think everybody was safe for the most part. I don't think there was any major issues.
Zero.
Did we lose anybody?
No.
Right.
And I only heard of one person that got sick, and they were also in Lotto 2 weeks before at the speed run. So, and they were sick when they got home. So, who knows? I think truthfully, we have a pretty smart group of people. I mean, none of us are idiots.
Right.
So, I mean, if you can get a boat to a race site at any point in time, you're not an idiot. It takes a bit of ingenuity and just a bit of common sense. People staying away from each other, respecting each other. That was the one thing that I was worried about. I was worried that you were going to have the macho, what are you doing with that mask on, dude? Take that mask off. Everybody was very respectful.
I have to be, it's interesting that you say that too, because I have to be careful because I have some family members that are recovering from either surgeries or treatments or whatever.
Right.
So I kind of need to be careful. I remember there's people that come up to you, want to shake your hand, and I'm like, well,
my mom was only a month out of chemo.
How's she doing?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
she's doing fantastic. So it was a weird time. Man.
Yeah.
But everybody was very respectful of each other, very helping and loving, and it was really just good. It was good to see,
Mhm.
and it was even good to see the knuckleheads that you're going to have in any group. It's not just our group. The knuckleheads that couldn't wait.
So what do you do? I guess as much as this is an interview for me in Battle Wagon, I'd like to be able to ask questions if I can.
Yeah, go ahead, shoot,
So
man.
what do we do to there are knuckleheads, and what do you want to do for six? First of all, I have no desire to be a manager or a higher up than what I am. It's not like I'm trying to run for OPA president. There's one and then the only.
You don't have to run. If you're willing, you can step right in, buddy.
No. Respect the office. What do you do for the longevity? What do you do to get those sponsorship dollars? What do you do? How organized do you be? Is North Carolina a good plan for doing like an OCNJ race? I would love. I've been talking to some of the people in the financing of Ocean City, New Jersey, and I know there's a lot of heavy hitters there, to bring this whole circus to Ocean City, New Jersey, to keep it going, to keep it the longevity of it successful. And what do you do? What's the plan? I know I fired off like 10 questions. You don't have to answer.
No, it's easy.
You could eat if you'd like.
Believe it or not, it's easy. And it's really nothing different than we've always done. When at OPA's inception, the very first thing we did was try to drive down the cost. Eliminating the entry fees. Listen, my old man says this all the time. If you know him, you've heard him say it. The clowns don't pay the circus pays the clowns. Okay, now prior to us, there was heavy entrance fees on any class because any promoter that was doing this wasn't going in their own pockets to get stuff done. My old man facilitated that for a couple of years.
Your daddy was the first one. You want to race that Sutphin? Come on, bring it. I didn't have any money. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we just want you there. That's what we want. And it's not because we're trying to set the hook and we're going to get you later, or there's none of that. What we want is for the sport of offshore to succeed. And that's the God's honest truth. I don't care what anybody tells you. I'm looking at you as sure as I'm sitting here. That's what we want. So as long as we're capable of doing this, that will always be the goal. And now what we did was we had a handful of races that would pay for us to come in, that had the money, that had, everything that you look for in a site. And then we have a few that don't have that, like, say, a Point Pleasant or Ocean City, New Jersey, where though you would think it's an easy place to drum up the money, or it's not, it's very difficult, but we'll still run those races because what was left over here will make this work. You know what I mean? And as long as we can continue to do that, we'll continue to play the field. When the day comes where we can't get anybody interested in offshore racing and we can't, make it work, then that day comes. But I don't see that day coming anytime soon. We have fantastic people that we're involved with. I can honestly say that at this point in time, we have the best group of offshore racing promoters that we've ever had. and not just us. I don't think there's ever been this caliber of people behind making this work. If you call any of the guys from the Big Six series, if you call any of our promoters from, any of our smaller, more developmental races, you will get the same impression from all of them. They're all outstanding individuals that have nothing but offshore in their heart. And it's amazing. Call Matt Soper, Rick Wright, Lucy Nicardi, Kerry down in Coco. I mean, if you start to talk to these people, offshore ain't going anywhere, dude. Offshore's locked in. Look at Fort Myers. Would they give them a 20-plus year contract after year one? Because the value's there. The value will always be there. That you can't just get this type of crowd. You can't call Kid Rock and say, hey, man, will you bring a bunch of people to my city? Kid Rock's going to say, sure, for $10 million. You know what I mean? You call Offshore and we're like, you'll let us come? You know what I mean? Think about it. So does the sponsorship need to come in to go to the next level? Yeah. Does professionalism and organization and all of this stuff have to come together in order for this thing to actually move forward? Absolutely. But is there a problem with where it's at? No. So it's a lot of chiefs and no Indians is really what it boils down to. Everybody has their idea of where the sport needs to go or what needs to happen in order for it to get there. My advice is do it. Go find a sponsor. Let me know how it works out. There's people in this world that have a Joe Hurricane right there on the wall, Class 6 boat. He's probably got 500 sponsors on there. I don't know how he does it. I can't sell to anybody, and I'm selling the whole organization. I'm trying anything and everything to get people attached to this. It's a lot more difficult than people think. When you talk about the highest level, what's the names you always hear? Red Bull, Monster. When you hear, right? Go talk to Red Bull and Monster. Let me know when you get a call back. It's almost impossible. It's all about who you know. And I gotta say one thing about Powerboat P1. That is a hard-working group of people that are trying very hard to find big name sponsors. And I won't elaborate. It's not my business. But what I can tell you is they're trying really hard. And it's the luck of the draw. It's, you're at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're begging. We don't have anything to sell. If you look at what we have, what can I promise you? I can promise you that right now, I think OPA has the support of most of the teams. I can tell you that in a month that could change. I could tell you that we have 13 races on the schedule. In a month, I could tell you we have 6. I don't know. But what I could tell you is that this group of people that is working on this is working really hard, and nobody's stopping. Everybody's in this for the right reasons. Our staff is a cast of characters, and I hear about them in a positive and a negative, in a middle of the road light all the time. What I can promise you about every single one of those people is they love you and they love this stuff. Go talk to our safety people. Talk to Barbara. Let her give you a big hug. They're as real and genuine as it could be. And as far as the longevity of offshore powerboat racing, I promise you it ain't going anywhere.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Because I gave an outboard motor exec a ride. I said, listen, would love to put your name on the side of this boat. And gave him a ride. And he said, after it was over and took him to lunch by boat, he said, I don't know what's under that hood, but that was the quickest acceleration I've ever been in. I said, all right, what do we have to do? I don't know. I have to talk to more execs.
Right.
So I have to just keep hammering it.
Yeah.
And don't give up and just keep it on.
The problem with the chain of command is it's designed to do that to you. It's designed to thwart you.
You can't stop it. No.
You just got to keep beating the door down. The problem is one day you do finally find a door that just says, sorry, but we're not interested.
And that's okay.
That happens, but you got to chase it. You got to just chase down the hole. I've had so many fantastic people help us with what we do. I'm not saying that those people aren't there. We have great sponsors. The guys that do help, the people that do help, it is so appreciated because without it, we really couldn't do it. This is a shoestring operation. And
in the meantime, I'll just keep giving boats away.
It's hard, man. I mean, look at what you're doing. It's tough. It's tough to move forward, but we're there.
But you do know that it's going to move forward. And that's what keeps me going.
Right.
Is that it's going to move forward. Even if we had a real awful season, like the the kill switch
2020.
pops off.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or I remember this was so hilarious in North Carolina. Matt's on the deck of the boat, and everybody's saying, "Oh my God, the transom must have fallen out," because the sea tow boat was pulling them on plane. And so Matt was on the deck, and you're really only on the deck like to keep the bow down.
Right.
And so they're getting towed with the D-ring, and Matt just laying out on the deck. And I'm thinking, oh man, I hope he's okay. I hope the boat's okay. I hope Joey's okay. I hope everything's okay. They're healthy. And I'm thinking, oh man, the kill switch, I don't know, whatever happened, but he had a second race to go to. So he had class 5 boat to go. So he was yelling at the sea tow boat, tow me in on plane in order to get back into the pits.
Right.
So as long as they stay together, man, it's just like it is sad when mechanical stuff hurts, but I know it can only get better.
Yeah.
And it is fun to be able to go to a D or to a Frank, and you're after you get through a little bit of the thick skin stuff, you could get what you need to get.
It's family, yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough. You know what's funny is I kind of just said it. It is family. It's like dealing with family. It's everybody's got an attitude you got to get used to, or a quirk about them, or but they're all great people, and I think there's only positive things. There's only positive things in front of us. There is no negative. There's only going back to work. That's all there is. That's all I want. It's the shop was great. Over the summer, boating exploded. I mean, I'm not complaining at all, but I want my racing back. I'm not sitting on the bench anymore.
That's so funny that you say that, because I took on a lot more repair work, which I prefer not to do, but it pays the bills.
Right.
And when you're starting out, you need the repair work because the orders aren't there.
Right.
So I bit off more than I could chew last year, where I took in a lot of repair work, but I didn't realize that there was a lot of people that were interested in boats that were prepared to purchase.
Right.
And it wasn't more than 25. That was a lot of boats.
Right.
For me in a 4-man shop.
It's a lot of boats.
For a 4-man shop, like the 12, and I'm coming out with something a little bit different, a little bit more faster on calm water that I haven't shared with anybody, but you'll see it soon, as well as the 21. So I told myself no more repair work.
Right.
We're just going to dedicate ourselves to new stuff, and hopefully that will stay for a little while.
I think so. I do. I think one thing that came of COVID is people realized how valuable their downtime was. I think before you had so little of it that, yeah, you enjoyed it when you had it, but it was back to work, back to work, back to work. Now with people being able to take a chill pill, it's got to be refreshing. We get to do it a lot. Like I laugh because really what we do is no vacation by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, we're working all weekend is basically what we're doing. But when you really love it, it doesn't feel that way. I'll do 1 million boat races a year. I won't voluntarily do overtime, So it's I think, I don't know. I think really what's going to come of all this is people are going to realize to enjoy what they have. Look how easily things can change, and I think I see this industry sticking around through this somewhat fallout, and we'll be back. I mean, the stock market looks good. I think, I think a lot of things that people thought were going to happen by this point in time didn't happen. I think that there's a lot of good to come. At least outweighs the negative for sure. So I think you're fine, man. I think you're doing a good thing. You're building a good product. I love what you're doing with the Muddy Duck. That's awesome.
Great.
It is great, man. Get kids started early. I dig it. And the savage is a savage.
A full moon, high tide, I take them through the meadows, and they fall asleep. They just totally fall asleep.
Right.
So same thing. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to build.
Right. Well, you got anything else on that notepad?
So I made an outline just because, you got to be organized. Like you said, you got to be organized. No. Just eat. I mean, I'm starving.
Well, let's do it, man. Let's end it on that. Christian, thank you for coming in, buddy.
Thank you for calling me. I appreciate it. I wasn't prepared to be asked. I feel like I shouldn't be, but it's a wonderful experience.
Nah, it's good, man. And listen, you're helping me out as much as I'm helping you out. Don't worry.
Well, if you ever need anybody to just talk at, that's fine. I don't mind it. I'll bring more pizza and cannoli.
That sounds good.
How'd you like it? Wait till you try the pizza. You know, the Barstool Sports guy. It's like what is it? One slice or one bite. Everybody knows the rules.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what you think about it. It's it's interesting. So
Awesome.
we'll see.
Well, I
it's
can't
a
wait.
little bit of how I grew up.
Nice.
My dad used to buy it. So when my mom was going to graduate school, my dad would have his cooking night. Wasn't cooking anything. He was cooking up numbers to the pizzeria. So like, that it was like twice a week he would get pizza. And this guy actually owned one of the first 32s.
Wow.
So, and I found him. Oh my God. The real quick. And I don't know how, if you want to edit this.
No, you're good, man.
So this guy, we got pizza from him 30 years ago. Like when it was my mom's college, graduate school, my dad
Right.
would buy. So I'm in a Borders 15 years, 20 years later, because that's where I went. I went to Borders, like when you have a driver's license.
Right.
So I've been looking for Hot Boat Magazine. I spent an hour looking for a Hot Boat Magazine, can't find it. So now like I'm succumbed to like, I have to read like four-wheel trucking or a Super Chevy or Hot Rod
Right.
or whatever, Grassroots Motorsports, right? Got them all stacked up. This guy has a cane. He's barely walking by me. He's handicapped. We're best friends now. And he has Hot Boat Magazine dangling from his cane as he's walking, right? I said, "Where'd you find that?" And I probably was a little bit more aggressive because now I spent an hour looking for that GD magazine, right? Where'd you find that? It was all he pointed to the lowest section of the magazine rack, like where the magazines that are covered in paper,
Right.
like over there. And I looked at him, and he has 2 crutches. And I said, "How the F did you get that?" He said, "Well, I put my crutches aside. I snaked down to the floor, and then like I put my whole body in there. We became friends, and he bought one of Tony's 32s.
Wow, that's cool.
And this is his pizza. So we'll see how it is. He
Awesome.
owns a pizza shop.
What's the name of his pizza shop?
We're not about that.
Okay.
We're not about that, and it doesn't matter. This is my gift to everybody.
Cool.
So
All right, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming
thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's go racing, let's go racing, everybody.
in.